a felon. This one day after President Jimmy Carter was laid to rest, and those who spoke at his funeral emphasized the authenticity of his character. In 2025 and beyond, could a person of true character and truth-telling ever get elected to the presidency? Please call or text.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Next week is the 22nd annual Boston Celtic Music Festival. We'll talk with musician and festival organizers Lindsay O'Donovan, widow of the late, great Brian O'Donovan, and Matt Smith from Club Passim, with live performances from the band Fox River and duo Hanukkah Castle and Adam Hendy. That's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President-elect Trump has been sentenced in a New York courtroom for his convictions on 34 counts of falsifying business records. This was linked to his efforts to conceal an affair ahead of the 2016 presidential election. NPR's Andrea Bernstein reports Trump won't face any jail time.
New York State Supreme Court Judge Juan Merchan said although the president-elect was an ordinary defendant in this courtroom, the extraordinary legal protections afforded the office of the president overrode other considerations. Trump was found guilty in May of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Merchan's remarks came in a brief hearing Friday morning where Trump, appearing by remote video link, again proclaimed his innocence and attacked the prosecutor, Alvin Bragg. In their statement, prosecutors warned that Trump's attacks on the legal system during this case had corroded the rule of law, but ultimately accepted the sentence of no jail time and no conditions. Trump says he'll appeal the jury verdict. Andrea Bernstein, NPR News, New York.
California authorities say the Los Angeles wildfires have killed at least 10 people. There are at least 5 major blazes burning in and around the city. The Eaton Fire in Pasadena has consumed more than 20 square miles and is entirely uncontained. The biggest blaze is the Palisades Fire burning northwest of Los Angeles. It has scorched more than 30 square miles. Steve Futterman is in Pacific Palisades and tells us firefighters say that blaze is 8% contained.
It may not be much, but for the first time there is some containment in the largest of the fires, the Palisades Fire. With diminished winds on Thursday, crews were able to go full tilt and attack the fires from the air using helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft. The air assault went on throughout the night. National Guard troops are now arriving here in L.A. to assist law enforcement and fire crews, and the search for those who may not have survived goes on.
Steve Futterman reporting. A Pennsylvania Democratic senator has accepted an invitation to meet with President-elect Trump at his Florida resort. NPR's Deirdre Walsh has more.
John Fetterman says he's the senator for all Pennsylvanians, not just Democrats, and will meet with and have a conversation with anyone, quote, if it helps me deliver for Pennsylvania and the nation. He's met with some of Trump's cabinet nominees and expressed support for some already. House Budget Chairman Jody Arrington is also heading down, along with groups of House GOP lawmakers, to chart out how to move Trump's big list of agenda items through Congress.
I think he's said already he's open to whatever process we end up with and wherever we land 1 or 2 bills. What he cares about is the outcomes.
Congressional Republicans are crafting legislation addressing border security, tax cuts, and energy, using a process to get around a Democratic filibuster. Deirdre Walsh, NPR News, the Capitol.
On Wall Street, the Dow is down 1.5%. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. With most Boston area colleges still on winter break, many students from Los Angeles are dealing with the wildfires at home. Tufts University student Kylie McNulty lives in Malibu, just outside the evacuation zone. She says the nearby Palisades fire has left the entire town without power, and she had to drive a few streets away just to get cell service.
And I'm kind of checking the news and getting information in like really short bites. Each time I come down here, a new friend has lost their house, an old favorite restaurant has burned down. It's terrible.
McNulty says she's preparing to return to Tufts next week while also being ready to evacuate at a moment's notice if need be. And it's not an ode to the late former President Jimmy Carter, but it could be. The Christmas tree in New York City's Rockefeller Center is on its way back to where it came from in the Berkshires. Once there, it'll be milled into planks to use as stair treads in homes built by Habitat for Humanity. The Berkshire Eagle reports that this Christmas season marked the first time since 1959 that a Massachusetts tree has been used at Rockefeller Center, and the first time the lumber from a tree will be used as part of a new home in the state. The tree is originally from West Stockbridge. Celtics host the Sacramento Kings at the Garden tonight, in the forecast sunny upper 30s today, increasing clouds mid-20s overnight. Light snow, low 30s tomorrow. The region will see an inch or less, according to Dave Epstein. It is 33 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
Hey, Mr. Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live. Thank you for the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back here on Tuesday when we'll be joined by the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell. She'll be with us from 1 to 2, taking our questions and yours. And in about a half hour, we're going to have some fabulous Celtic music. We're so excited about that. Good morning, Jim.
We heard them rehearsing, and they're incredible. Good morning to you, Marjorie. So incoming President Donald Trump virtually attended a hearing in New York City this morning where Judge Merchan sentenced him to unconditional discharge. We'll explain what that means in a minute, for 34 counts of falsifying business records. Sadly, the following does not matter to half of America, but that makes Donald Trump the first U.S. president ever to have been sentenced for a crime, and the first U.S. president ever who was formally declared a felon. That happened at the moment of his sentencing. This, of course, is one day after President Jimmy Carter was laid to rest, and those who spoke at his funeral emphasized the authenticity and honesty of the former president. Here is outgoing President Joe Biden speaking at Carter's funeral.
We have an obligation to give hate no safe harbor, and to stand up to what my dad used to say is the greatest sin of all, the abuse of power.
Wonder who he was speaking to. So as we're now 10 days out from the return of the now felonious Donald Trump to the White House, the question to you at 877-301-8970, call or text, could someone like Jimmy Carter, a plain-spoken, truth-telling leader, ever make it to the White House again? Or has deceit, law and rule-breaking, dishonesty been so baked into our politics that Trumpism lives forever? Our number, 877-301-8970. If you want to comment also on the sentencing this morning, unconditional discharge means in English, essentially there are no conditions, there's no nothing. He is formally declared a convicted felon, but there is no probation, no fine, obviously no jail time for Donald Trump. The number is 877-301-8970. I thought yesterday was pretty great. And I think we both thought that particularly Ford's kid, Gerald Ford's kid, talking about the relationship between the two opponents in 1976 was quite beautiful. So can a truth teller emerge as a leader in American politics?
Well, you know, this is a tough one for me because on the one hand, I admire him tremendously for being such a truth teller. But I don't know if it was a good idea, as Jimmy Carter did, in the middle of people waiting in these long lines for gas back in the late 70s. I
remember it well.
When he told everybody that we needed to find purpose and meaning in our lives before the nation could get over this gas crisis and everything. Sometimes I think, you know, one of the stories you read this morning quoted the great famed Greek Socrates saying that he's not sure that honesty and politics need to necessarily mix all the time. Now, that doesn't mean you should do what Donald Trump is doing. I mean, he just posted on Truth Social that there were, in terms of his 34 felonies, he's just made him a felon, and he was found guilty of. He says there's no crime, no damages, no proof, no facts, no law. He blames the judge for being biased or going crazy out in these California wildfires, because he's a climate change denier. He's blaming everything on Governor Gavin Newsom refusing to sign a water restoration declaration, which apparently doesn't exist. tourist. And he was also blaming these smelts, these fish they're trying to protect out there.
I know that.
You don't want to be lying like he does, and probably going to lie all during his presidency. He's a little bit extreme. But, I don't know.
So I asked you a question about an hour ago. What was the answer to the question?
The answer is...
Can a truth-telling person prevail in American politics anymore?
Well, I don't think you can be quite as truthful as Jimmy Carter was and survive as a politician.
And there's truth.
Calling the nation a bunch of depressed people with no meaning in their lives is not a good idea.
Well, our number is 877-301-8970. Get in a call or text. My initial answer to my own question was going to be no, at least not for the foreseeable future. But then I said to myself this. I said, Jim, what was the major criticism of the Kamala Harris campaign?
She didn't answer questions well enough.
She didn't tell the truth about Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, had she told the truth about Joe Biden and said, I have great respect for the man, he has accomplished great things, I'd like to think he accomplished it with me as a partner, but the reality is he's not who he used to be, which is not a criticism.
I don't think she needed to say that.
Well, I think she did need to say that. I think she needed to
differentiate herself from him on
how
very
about that? Well,
important
that's truth-telling then.
That she should have differentiated herself.
So if she had been a truth-teller in that front, would she be president of the United States?
I think it would have helped her to be
a
truth teller on that front. But the great example to me is Bill Clinton. Remember how many times Bill Clinton, no matter what situation it was, I feel your pain?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't feel anybody's pain, but it was a very effective strategy to make people feel that he had empathy for their situation. I think it made people feel better. I think a lot of people knew he didn't feel their pain. Or when people say there's some tragedy and the politicians all run out and say that their thoughts and prayers are with the people that have suffered this tragedy, I don't believe them. I think most people don't believe them. But if you are the person that's in the middle of that tragedy, you kind of like to hear that because it makes you feel, again, that someone is empathizing with the horrible thing that's happened to you.
877-301-8970. So again, our core question is, could someone who is a truth teller like Jimmy Carter, maybe not the extremes that Marjorie mentioned, prosper in American politics today? That's fine. And also, how do you feel about I guess two things about the sentencing. One, that a guy is about to, what day is today? 10 days from now, a felon, a guy who is formerly determined to be a felon, 34 felony convictions, is about to be sworn in. And what do you think about the fact that Judge Merchan, who I thought was great throughout this whole thing, decided to have no consequence for the sentencing, other than the fact that he is formerly declared a felon? How do you feel about that, by the way? Merchan. Giving him nothing.
At least he did something, which is more than has happened in any of these cases. I mean, the President of the United States is a felon, and that's pretty damning, I think. And he did, and I'm hoping that we get a release before the inauguration day, I hope, of Jack Smith's report on what happened on January 6th. We know a lot of it already.
Well, the appellate court has now said he can release it, and apparently Merrick Garland is going to release the portion, not that deals with the Florida case, with the classified documents, but the important one to me, the attempt to overthrow the election vis-a-vis around January 6th.
But the Supreme Court could screw that up, too.
They could.
Screw
and by the way,
that up,
we should say that. This is really important. I'm so glad you said that. The vote by the Supreme Court to allow the sentencing of Trump to go ahead today, I naively assumed it was going to be 7-2 with the two corrupt judges, Alito and Thomas, siding with the president, Justice Alito, who spoke to the president-elect the other day, which is incredible. The vote was 5-4. One vote switched. The two Republicans nominated members of the Supreme Court who voted with the three liberals, were Chief Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, had one vote switched. There would not even have been a sentencing today of Donald Trump. One vote.
One vote.
One vote switched.
So I think that our ability to, I hope someone will leak it, but our ability to actually see the details of Jack Smith's report on January 6th hanging in the balance with the Supreme Court. I think Amy Coney Barrett may surprise us somewhat. I think she may be
You thought Justice Roberts was going to, Chief Justice Roberts was going to surprise us.
Well, I did, but now I've been disabused of that idea, Jim. That's not going to happen. But I still have hope for her. I was surprised Kavanaugh was not in the majority that said the hearing should go on.
Well, you know why? You read the report. He was drunk during the... Okay. By the way, that was not. That was not.
I like beer.
Well, we don't know. It may be true.
I like beer. He likes beer. I like beer. I like beer. I like
Let's
beer.
go to Robert in Brockton. You are first on Boston Public Radio. Thank you much for the call. Hi.
Yes, welcome to 2025.
Thank you. Very kind of you. What's up?
Well, okay. Now, step one in the prosecution of the trial of Donald Trump was to find that the jury said he was guilty.
That's correct.
Right.
Which they did.
And step two has been that the judge in that case has sentenced Donald Trump as a felon.
Which he did.
Now, what about step three, which will be Donald Trump filing an appeal? What if wins the appeal?
If he wins the appeal, then he is not a felon. I mean, that's how appeals work.
Okay. So I think we have to hold off and cheering about him being a felon at this point.
Well, he is a felon at this point, and if it turns out he appeals and his conviction is overturned, Robert, you call us back and we'll revisit our position that finally there was some accountability for a law-breaking president. Robert, thank you kindly for the call.
Well,
By the way, do you want to hear a little bit?
I think that's the whole reason he did it,
What?
Merchan. And I wonder what his security is like, because I think he's probably enemy number one in a lot of people's minds that are big Trump supporters. But he did it, and he made it. He's a felon. And I think
agree
that's,
with you. I agree.
Even though he didn't put the restrictions on him, like about travel, and in Florida you have to commit a violent crime before. I mean, felons can't vote in a lot of places, but
Right.
that's not true in Florida unless you kill somebody, or rape somebody, or something very serious about that. But as you were
Well, he was
talking
found
about,
to sexually abuse, not criminally,
right, but that wasn't.
civilly.
But that
Eugene
wasn't
Carroll.
but that wasn't the Merchan case,
Yeah,
and
I
that
know.
that was a civil case.
I know.
But you pointed out this morning that
What did I say?
the third of the people who do what Trump did in terms of falsifying his business records, what happens to them?
They go to jail.
They
New
go
York
to jail.
Times did research. They looked
Yep.
at the last 10 years of people who were convicted of crimes similar to the ones that Trump was. A third of them in New York State went to jail. Obviously, Donald Trump's not doing that. We almost never hear anything from the courtroom because of these obscene rules that don't allow live broadcast of no federal court broadcasts. Most states allow it. New York State does not allow it, incredibly. But after the fact, you can hear it. Just to get a little taste, here's the prosecuting attorney this morning at the hearing describing Trump's behavior.
Instead of preserving, protecting, and defending our constitutionally established system of criminal justice, the defendant, the once and future President of the United States, has engaged in a coordinated campaign to undermine its legitimacy. Far from expressing any kind of remorse for his criminal conduct, the defendant has purposefully bred disdain for our judicial institutions and the rule of law.
Yeah, I don't want to get sidetracked today, but one of my biggest, causes that I've been wildly unsuccessful at, the fact that all of these criminal cases across the country are brought in the name of the people of the state of New York, the people of the United States of America in federal court, and we don't have the right to hear live what happens in every federal courtroom and some state courtrooms is an abomination. 877-301-8097.
Well, our government wants to run more and more in secrecy, and in Massachusetts, we're one of the worst,
quite well at
one of the worst offenders in that regard. Great editorial in the Globe today.
I saw it, yeah.
About the Haley Montgomery case, that little girl who was murdered by her father. Harmony Montgomery. She was murdered by her father, saying, "Why don't we know? Aren't people entitled to know how this happens? Whose privacy are we protecting?" The little girl tragically is dead. The father's in prison.
Murderer, right.
I mean, it's ridiculous. They don't want us to know anything.
Let's go to Michelle in Arlington. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for calling, Michelle. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
I'm calling to say, with respect to your question about is there room for truth in politics, I would say only if it is backed by billionaires, because since the Citizens United decision, it's the money in politics that brings everything else. And it doesn't matter if you're a truth teller or not a truth teller, as long as billionaires care for you. And with respect to the Donald Trump convicted felon, if you're a convicted felon on 34 counts and there are zero penalties attached to that, really, what difference does it make?
Well, I think the difference it makes is I wish there had been more to the sentence, Michelle, but I think the declaration that he stands alone as the only convicted felon in the history of the presidency, it matters a lot. When you read people like Maggie Haberman, who knows him very well from the New York Times, this eats away at him. And if it eats away at him and it holds him somewhat accountable, I'm good with it. So I hear your point. And Michelle, thank you very much for your call. We appreciate it.
Well, along those lines, Maggie Haverman and other people have pointed out that one of the reasons that he was so angry at that press conference earlier in the week, going on and on about Canada, and he's going to invade this, he's going to invade Greenland, and all. He didn't say that, but he didn't rule it out, going to send the Navy SEALs to Canada. He was really ticked off about the prospect of the Jack Smith investigation being made public and about the sentencing. So it did make him very angry. And, he's gone on Truth Social saying all these crazy things. I guess that's the issue. I mean, there was some of the examples in the story that we read this morning. I mean, we all know by now that George Washington and his idea about not chopping down the cherry tree may not have been actually true. But when George H.W. Bush put Clarence Thomas in the Supreme Court and said race had nothing to do with it, I think most people knew that wasn't true. He wanted to have an African American on the Supreme Court, and it was obviously good that there was an African American on the Supreme Court. But when he said that, is that a big deal? Did he lie about that? I don't know. Is that a big deal, Jim?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's a big. Honesty is a sort of nice thing, don't you think? It's sort of an appealing
to be
notion.
Truthful?
Yeah, to be truthful is
yeah,
sort of nice.
But I guess what I'm saying is, to me, there are lies and then there are
big
lies.
Well, I agree with that. I agree. Well, do you remember the lie the truth that I think guaranteed? We heard Mondale's son, Vice President Mondale's son, presidential candidate Mondale's son, read his eulogy written by his father. Wasn't it Mondale who said, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to raise. Was it Mondale? I'm going to raise your taxes. And he won't say it. I will.
That didn't go well.
Well, I don't think it. No. How many states did he win?
But obviously, the other thing about Jimmy Carter is he was following Richard Nixon, who was a perpetual, repeat lying offender.
But doesn't Richard Nixon look like a penny ante?
Oh my God!
Nothing next to the next president of the United States.
And he was not a felon.
He was not a felon. Let's go to
Harry in the car.
Hi, Harry.
Hey, how are you?
We're good.
So, President Carter, we could have another honest person. He was a Naval Academy graduate, and they used to throw peanut farmer at him. The guy was very smart.
Yep.
He was smart.
I remember in, I think it was like 78, he says, we're never going to be able to live how we are now. I was very mad. But no one got rid of the Department of Energy. They're trying to get rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah, he created the Department of Education.
He invented the smartphone.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Well, no, I do now, though. But, Harry, thank you much for the call. We got to take a break, but can we play a little from Trump?
Yes, he was a nuclear physicist.
He was.
Which is, pretty impressive.
I think it's fairly impressive.
Okay.
Here is Donald Trump speaking at the actual sentencing in the courtroom. He was not there. He was on Zoom. But, during the courtroom proceeding, here's Trump.
I was under a gag order. I'm the first president in history that was under a gag order where I couldn't talk about aspects of the case that are very important. I guess I'm still under, so probably I won't do it now. I assume I'm still under a gag order. But the fact is that I'm totally innocent. I did nothing wrong.
Okay.
One of the texters wants to know, what is the Trump company policy on hiring convicted felons? That's a pretty good one. Okay.
That's a good question.
We're talking about whether you can still be a truthful person like the late President Jimmy Carter and become a successful politician in the United States of America in 2025. We're going to take a quick break. We're broadcasting from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When you think about your later years, you might picture relaxing on a warm beach or spending time with family, or maybe you start imagining a new life in a different country.
When I was in college, I never spent a year abroad. This is like my year abroad at 73, and it's really, really fun.
How to retire abroad. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Subaru of New England. This winter, the all-wheel drive 2025 Subaru Forester is committed to keeping your loved ones safe on snowy roads. You can find your Subaru retailer at SubaruofNewEngland.com. And Trinity Rep, presenting Someone Will Remember Us. This moving new play is based on the real-life testimonies of U.S. military veterans, a Gold Star family, Iraqi civilians, and refugees living in Rhode Island. Opens January 23rd. TrinityRep.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie, and we're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH. By the way, you're making fools of yourselves.
No, they're not.
Don't go overboard.
I love it.
Come on.
I think it's
really.
great.
Okay, but thank you, sort of. We're live at the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In about 15 minutes, we're going to hear some spectacular music. In the 1 o'clock hour, Governor Deval Patrick is going to zoom in when we're talking to Amari Paris Jeffries, who's head of Embrace Boston, and Attorney General Andrea Campbell will join us on Tuesday at the library. I think it's 1 to 2, Jamie? 1 to 2 on Tuesday for Ask the Attorney General to answer your questions. Our text prompt of the day, this is where Marjorie reads some of your texts right before the 1 o'clock news, 877-301-8970, concerns a topic I am very unfamiliar with, interrupting, and specifically those who interrupt. I don't know what you're laughing about. Based on a piece in the Globe today by Meredith Goldstein, how do you deal with the interrupter in your life? Are you an interrupter? And does interrupting drive you crazy or just part of normal conversation? Marjorie and I will read some of the text if she allows me to get a word in edgewise. Right now, though, if you're just joining us, we're talking about incoming President Trump's sentencing this morning, Jimmy Carter's legacy, and asking if there's still any appetite for pals who don't openly lie and cheat their way through every situation. 877-301-8970.
Now, our staff has done some research.
Oh, they have?
Yes, people were concerned that we have a felon as the President of the United States and what his policy might be at his own company for hiring felons. We don't know about the Trump company, but multiple media reports say he could not work at McDonald's. And in New York, if he wanted a real estate broker's license, he would need permission from the Secretary of State. In Florida, he can't be a firefighter or legally tend bar at Mar-a-Lago. And Florida law prohibits bars from employing bartenders who've been convicted of a felony within 5 years. And a texter says he couldn't be an Uber or Lyft driver either. So he's a lucky guy. That's all I can say, Jim.
Let's go to
he's a lucky guy.
Dan in Somerville, welcome to the show, Dan. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. Happy Friday.
And to you.
Yeah, I think there's still room for truth tellers. I think people are kind of tired of the very polished politician, but Bernie Sanders, if you look at him in the 80s, what he's saying is the same thing he's saying now. Like, you can put the video side by side. And
That's a good one. That is a good one. Yeah,
that
keep
is
going.
a good one.
Yeah.
And he says tough things, too. He's not sugarcoating. That's a great one.
That is a really good example,
Maybe Vermonters
Dan. Thank
are more that originally elected him mayor of Burlington. Maybe
He's a Brooklynite. He's not always a Vermonter now.
Yeah, and he was the mayor of Burlington for a long time before he became a senator. Dan, that's a great one. Thank you very much for the call.
Who is another politician, a higher-ranking person who you'd say is always, you're remarking, my God, he or she or they are willing to confront hard truths and say it. Who is that person?
Well, we have a couple locally, I think.
Okay.
The mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. I think she's pretty straightforward about a lot of things. Andrea Campbell is often very straightforward about a lot of things. She's the Attorney General. So there are a couple. You got any you want to name?
Well, they obviously have no future in politics, then, if that's the case. Susan in Magnolia, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Susan, thank you for calling. What's up?
Oh, Phil Eng. Somebody says, the new head of the team.
Well, I think
there
that's...
you go.
Well, he's not elected to anything.
He's not elected, but he's a guy that's, can tell you straight on that the T is struggling, as we all know. That's a good one, too.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. My point would be that the question is more what our society is willing to accept.
I agree. And what is it willing to accept?
So far, well, I'm not. I'm going to be optimistic, and I think that things have swung so far to the crazy that in history things change and we'll go back. But it's up to us to be diligent about it.
Well, Susan, I want to believe, I really do, exactly what you believe. But let me ask you a question that causes me pause. At about, 10:30, 10:15 this morning, Donald Trump formally became a felon. Do you think there's one person who voted for him who said, I really regret my vote now that he's formally a felon?
No, they think it's all persecution.
I know.
I'm getting the text
but that is my
everybody's
point
out
being,
to get him.
That doesn't bode very well for the American people, hoping for a change. You mean down the line, maybe, right? Is that where you're going?
Well, I'm thinking it's going to take time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think that, listening to the eulogy for Carter,
Yeah.
I mean, everything was about character and integrity. And I have to think that decent people still hold that to be true.
I love that you said that. Susan, thank you very much for the call. I don't know if we said this on air, if we only said it to each other off the air. We both remarked that it appeared to us, we were broadcasting live the funeral yesterday, at the same time we were watching it on CNN. It appeared that when Joe Biden and his wife sat down next to Kamala Harris and her husband, they never said hello to each other.
I didn't see it.
And the New York Times writes that they did never say.
Yeah.
What is that about?
I don't know. And Trump was whispering into Barack Obama's
And he's
ear to beat
laughing
the
his
band
ass
and
off.
laughing back and forth. What's kind of an interesting thing, too, the question of public morality versus private morality.
That is a wonderful point.
We all know our local guy, JFK, was a serial philanderer, but his public moves were pretty above board, I would think, and heaven knows he certainly established himself as a hero when he carried that coconut out to sea to help his fellow crewmen get
So
saved.
where are
in
you
BG
on that?
109. I don't know. I heard an interesting podcast the other day about Gary Hart. We all remember Gary Hart wound up on the monkey business with Donna Rice years ago, and he invited people to. He was another philanderer, but he was a very talented politician.
And a liar about being.
He was a very talented politician. I don't know. That's a tough one.
So can I watch Woody Allen movies again?
Well, that's different. I think that's different. It was his child.
I hear you. That's his private
as far
versus...
as I know, everybody that was involved with JFK was at least over 21, if not over 18.
Well, there actually wasn't that...
There was a college student
Mimi, or
from
whatever
Wheaton. I don't know how old Mimi was. She went to Wheaton.
Whatever.
He flew her down to D.C. in the weekends when Jackie wasn't there.
She just turned 18. I don't know. Judy in Townsend, welcome to the show. Hey, Judy, what's up?
I want to come closer to home.
Yeah.
And I want to say that our own legislature doesn't even follow the voters' wishes, i.e., having Diana DiZoglio do her
audit.
Her audit.
That is brilliant.
That's a great point.
That's a great one.
And you know what kills me, Judy, is that Karen Spilka, the Senate president, talks about, what does she call it, an historic year of accomplishment? I mean, where you have people clamoring for some truth about what's going on up
Transparency.
there. With these public disclosures and all
agreed.
that kind of stuff. Judy, that's a great point.
That is a really good one, Judy. Thank you very much for the call.
Oh, somebody wonders if Trump will be allowed in Canada as a convicted felon.
Well, I don't understand. Well, when it becomes the 51st state, I'm sure he can go.
Oh, somebody likes Mayor Pete Buttigieg. I don't know enough about Mayor Pete to know if he's truthful all the time, but someone has just elected him as a true guy. Anyway, let's go to Rick in Millis. Thank you
1 minute, Rick.
Oh,
Take it
we're
away.
almost out of time. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
As far as will we ever have a truthful president, I'm very hopeful with that.
Whoa.
There's a quote attributed to Winston Churchill that says, America will always do the right thing after it's done everything else.
Yeah.
So I think there's a Sir Lancelot out there.
Yeah.
And when he makes it through the woods, I think we'll be back on track.
Well, let's hope Churchill wasn't lying when he said
Sir Lancelot wasn't viewed as the truthful person, I don't
Which
think.
one was
right?
he?
He was carrying on with Guinevere.
I don't know anything about it.
Don't you know King Arthur? Did you ever see Camelot?
I'm not interested in that.
Guinevere and Sir Lancelot fell in love.
We're not talking about presidents carrying on.
Oh, okay.
A lot of them do that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem. Okay,
well,
Rick, thank you
a lot
for
of them
the...
did carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to end this right now because we're going to have another
Because Marjorie's
round.
disgusted with the whole thing.
No, I'm not disgusted. It's just, it's depressing that Maria Bartiromo on Fox News blaming the fires on migrants, wondering if you'll play this later on, if migrants cause these fires.
Well, did you also read the piece in the Washington Post today? Who's going to rebuild Los Angeles? Migrants. No, it's true. It's a real conundrum, as they say.
Okay. Next week kicks off the 4-day Boston Celtic Music Festival, which, if you've never been, is absolutely wonderful. We'll talk with Lindsay O'Donovan about it, as well as Club Pasim's Matt Smith, and a whole bevy of performers are going to perform for us right here at the Boston Public Library. Live music Friday is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Saints, Sinners, Lovers, and Fools, 300 Years of Flemish Masterworks, on view this winter. For tickets, you can visit pem.org. And Babson College, where you can advance your career with an MBA or specialized master's at the school ranked number 2 best college in the United States by the Wall Street Journal. More at babson.edu/grad programs. Cozy up with a blanket, grab some hot tea, and imagine yourself living in the picturesque Yorkshire Dales. Now, stop imagining and start streaming. All creatures, great and small, anytime you want on the PBS app. And Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting Daphnis Prieto's COC Quartet, live at Berkeley Performance Center on Saturday, January 24th. This dynamic ensemble blends Cuban rhythms with contemporary jazz. CelebritySeries.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Attorney General Andrea Campbell will join us from 1 to 2 on Tuesday, our next day at the library. Reminder about our text prompt at 877-301-8870, based on a piece in the Globe by Meredith Goldstein, our buddy, about interrupting. How do you deal with the interrupter in your life? Are you an interrupter? And does interrupting drive you crazy? Or is it just part of normal conversation? Stop laughing. We'll read them before one o'clock. This is going to be brutal. We should not have done this.
No, I'll restrain myself.
No, you're not going to be able to restrain yourself.
Okay.
It's time for Live Music Friday, thank God. Next Thursday in Harvard Square, the great Club Passim helps kick off the 22nd annual Boston Celtic Music Festival. Before the festival explodes across Cambridge and Somerville, they'll host shows at Passim as well as the Burn. Tommy McCarthy and his whole family were here last week. The Rockwell, Crystal Ballroom, and for the first time ever, the Somerville Theater. That is fabulous, actually. That is great. Here with us at the interview desk, carrying on the torch left by one of the greatest people Margie and I have ever known, and I think everybody says the same thing. The legendary Brian O'Donovan is Lindsay O'Donovan. Hi, Lindsay. How are you?
Hi, Jim.
Lindsay's going to be awarding the first ever Brian O'Donovan Legacy Grant. She'll describe it in a minute. Also here, Matt Smith. Matt's the managing director of a Club Passim in Harvard Square. And hi, Matt. Nice to see you again.
Great to be back.
And fiddle player who is spectacular, Hanukkah Castle. Hanukkah's going to play in a few minutes. Great to see you. Before we dive into all this, here's the band Fox River performing a medley of Sunday's Well and The Fox's Tale. River. That was fabulous, you guys. Hey, Kate Knutsvig, did I get your last name right? Shocking, I know it is. Kate, can you you're on the fiddle, by the way, for those who are not watching on streaming or not here. Could you introduce your bandmates and tell us what their instruments are?
Absolutely. So to my direct right is Eamon Sefton on an instrument called the bouzouki.
Yikes.
Which is not super well known. Originally a Greek instrument, but has been adopted into the Irish tradition.
It's beautiful.
Next to Eamon is Eva Meyer on the uilleann pipes, a very distinctly Irish instrument. And then next to Eva is Simon Lace on the banjo.
You guys were great. Thanks so much for playing. We really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
us.
Fox River.
Well, so, Lindsay, let's start with you. What is the Boston Celtic Music Festival for people that don't know?
The Boston Celtic Music Festival was founded 22 years ago by originally Shannon Heaton and Laura Cortese, two preeminent musicians in the Boston area, and just to promote a really local, wonderful festival for people that were around this area. And Brian got involved he was working at GBH, and he was a big part of promoting it and encouraging all the musicians that were running it and getting new people in and being involved.
It's amazing because Brian really didn't like live music that much. Really, it's shocking that he did that. So Matt, could you give us the big picture? It's a multi-day thing, multi-venue, tons of artists. We're just going to hear a couple of them today. Give us the big picture.
Yeah, it kicks off Thursday night at Club Passim in Harvard Square, and we're going to have shows in Club Passim Thursday night and Friday night. And then the whole operation moves into Davis Square in Somerville, where there's going to be concerts happening at the Rockwell, the Burren, Crystal Ballroom, and Somerville Theater. Closing out for the big...
You ever done the Somerville Theater before?
We haven't. This is the biggest BCM fest ever.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
So, Hanukkah, what's your deal? How are you involved with these scoundrels? What's the deal?
Well, I was around back when BCM Fest started. Shannon Heaton and Laura Cortese, both great friends of mine, they had this vision. I was there at all of the early years of the festival. And then I was just telling someone, I got married the beginning of January, and so I've actually missed a lot of the years recently because of...
This month?
No, sorry, in 2014.
Okay.
Oh, that was not clear.
Okay.
And because of various trips, I just haven't been at many festivals, so this is my first time back.
And now
for a
you're
while.
local. Are you a local kid
I live in
now?
Somerville.
You're in Somerville. That's right.
Yeah.
Can you spend a second? I mean, we do this all the time, but it's so. Can you talk about Brian a little bit and what he meant in your career?
I mean, Brian O'Donovan. It's really hard to even, come up with a great description of everything he did for the scene. But one of the things I love to talk about the most with Brian and Lindsay is actually just the parties that would be at their house after BCM Fest and after all these concerts and stuff. It's like we would stay up all night, and the O'Donovan kids would come down and grab some ham and go back up, and we would just keep playing tunes, and it's just the community spirit that the O'Donovans really.
Those were great.
Wait, Eamon, grab a mic because I want one more thing on Brian. You ever invited to those parties with a ham?
I may have been to one or two of those parties.
You have Brian connection too there?
Oh yeah, I met Brian when I was probably 13 or maybe even younger. At
This
a
is
GBH
Eamon from
show.
Fox River, by the way. I should have made it clear. I'm sorry, Eamon. Go ahead.
Yeah, Brian has just been such a huge supporter of me and my music and all of my friends who grew up in the same age range. He just was always super enthusiastic every time he saw us, and he'd come to our shows. He invited me out to be on his show several times. So he's a really big supporter.
What does that do for you when you? I'm sorry. When you hear
I
that,
was just going to say to Lindsay, because I didn't know this until I read this a piece in the Globe by A.Z. Madonna, talked about how you met Brian when you were over performing at the Village Coach House, which used to be a great place in Brookline. Mm-hmm. But you met him and you got engaged.
No, that's actually
3 days later.
No,
that's not true.
We got engaged 3 days after he moved in with me.
Oh, okay.
So,
I was going. Oh,
wait a second.
I'm
The other story
devastated.
is much better.
The other story is
Stay
much
with the
better.
other story.
So it was 48 hours of
No.
I want to marry this guy. So
No.
that's a mistake.
That was a
Oh,
mistake.
too bad. Okay. But you took a chance, let him move in, and then you decided he was okay as a roommate.
He's
And then
okay.
you decided
He knew enough songs.
He knew enough songs. But tell us about meeting him, though. You were performing there.
I wasn't performing. I was at a jam session. I was at a trad session.
Okay.
And he just walked in and sat down next to me, and I asked him if he knew this, I think it's a Cork song, The Boys of Barna Shreida, and he knew it, so I thought, well, he's got to be okay if he knows that song. And then we didn't meet up again until the night that John Lennon had been killed.
Oh.
And then he called me the day after to talk about John Lennon, and it was just, It just happened very organically.
Well, that's a pretty good story,
That
too.
is a
We can
pretty
go
good
with
story.
that one. Hanukkah, what does it mean? When you're surrounded by all these other great players, that's one of the great things about this fest and the stuff that Brian and Lindsay did for so long. What's that feel like? You know?
I mean, Boston is such a unique place. Like, this whole vision of BCM Fest, of bringing the Irish and the Cape Breton and the Scottish communities together and just being surrounded. I was just saying out there that, like, you can live in Massachusetts and still do an entire tour without, like, getting on a plane because there's so many great venues, and Brian was such a big part of that, like, promoting the live music. BCM Fest has done such an amazing job of broadcasting just this whole scene that we have in Boston, which is so special.
How big is Celtic music in 2025, Matt, in Greater Boston?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, we traditionally, Passim had not necessarily been a home of Celtic music. It was always part of the programming. But when BCM Fest started, and actually I met Hanukkah and Laura back before the festival had started and started programming them into what we were doing at the club for several years. And it was my introduction into Celtic music in the Boston scene and seeing how huge it is.
Did you like it?
Well, Jim's a convert, totally.
Yeah, I admitted to Brian because
Yeah.
he was such an honest guy. I had to always say, every time I saw him, I hated Celtic music. No, honest to God, I'm sorry. I know it's a thing.
Heard it,
But
Hanukkah,
you know what
that's
the problem
why.
was? The first time we ever had Brian on our show, I had actually listened to a lot of it, and he picked the things for us to listen to. Just like when you went to Ireland for the first time, he told you every single place to go,
Every bar
and
to go to with the best music. It was unbelievable.
And I fell in love with it right away.
I
after
hardly
that,
even knew him, by the way. I think I told you this story before. I knew him hardly at all. He was across the hall. I knew the show on Saturday afternoons, but he spent about an hour and a half telling me not only what bars to go to, but what hotels to stay at. I mean, he arranged my whole trip. It was unbelievable, and I thought that was awfully nice for someone that hardly even knew who I was.
So how much has this grown I don't mean from day one, 22 years ago to now, but in recent years, how much of a growth have you seen in this whole thing of yours?
Significant. I mean, especially in seeing how the festival has grown from something that was mostly done at Club Passim. We were a host venue from the first festival, but then BCM Fest became part of Club Passim a few years later. And we were doing things mostly in Harvard Square, but being able to expand it into bigger spaces in Davis Square has been a really great thing to bring more people in, but, both performers and audience.
But you know what's odd about the whole Boston thing is I'm Irish, and
really?
Yes.
Oh,
but,
okay.
and I came from Fall River, and there were Irish people in Fall River, and of course, we were excited about St. Patrick's Day and stuff. But I never saw anything like this Irish thing till I got to Boston, where there was like an obsession with everybody in South Boston was Irish. There was this whole thing, but it was more Danny Boy and just sort of this maudlin kind of Irish, forget everything but the grudges kind of stuff. I would have thought Celtic music would have been huge 50 years ago in Boston, because we talk about Ireland all the time here, and the Irish ran Boston for a long time, or the politics, the church, and all that. So why are we late to the game? Any of you?
I don't know that we are late to the game. I think it's been, this music has been very part of a community.
Yeah.
And now it's getting more of a platform. And also that, I think sometimes stereotypically people think of Irish as Celtic and not of the other traditions.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely.
That's true.
And,
Yep.
and my, with Jim, I was kind of more in the, I don't think I like this. And then when I was introduced to not the Danny Boys and things like that, so something a little...
I also love Danny Boy.
I love Danny Boy.
Come on.
No, every funeral I've ever been to, you got Danny Boy going. I shouldn't criticize it. It's a
going
great
a little
song.
bit deeper into culturally what that music is beyond what the top surface is.
Hanukkah, did I read that you were a traditional violinist? You're a pianist before you were a violinist, but then you switched to the fiddle. I mean, what was your transition?
I grew up in Oregon, and I played a couple years of Suzuki violin, like classical violin, and but I switched actually to Texas style fiddle pretty early on.
What did it?
I couldn't read. I had a really hard time reading music, and fiddle music is not centered around reading. So I did that. I got into Scottish music. I came to Berkeley in 1996, and actually I was
Another
just thinking
Berkeley
about
kid.
like Tommy opened the Burn in 94, 95 or something, and or somewhere right around then, and then everything happening at Passim and everything happened with Berkeley and NEC and then Brian, and it's like this perfect mix of just propagating Celtic music to the world.
And if you weren't listening last week, Tommy McCarthy is also reopening the Toad, and Christopher's is about to become McCarthy's in Florida Square. Tell us about the Brian O'Donovan Legacy Fund.
Well, when Brian was dying, we realized that obviously that people were going to want to contribute to something. And aside from Friday Cafe that we were involved in Cambridge, we wanted to do something that would celebrate his musical legacy. And Brian and my kids and I talked about it, and we walked across to Passim, and I think my oldest son Kieran and I had a meeting with Matt and Abby and Jim Wooster. And actually my daughter Aoife suggested, why didn't we do it under the umbrella of Passim? She said, you're not reinventing the wheel. They're already set up for these things. So met with Matt, and Matt and Abby and Jim kind of came up with this idea of the Legacy Fund, and that was it.
You know, you mentioned your daughter Aoife's Grammy Award-winning singer and performer, and you've got a great voice. I've heard you sing over the years many times at the Christmas. Well, it sounds pretty good to me. So and you've got 4 children. What's your musical background? I mean,
classical.
Classical. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But the whole family. We're talking about the parties before with Eamon. The whole family. It seemed like it was a whole music running through the whole household growing up, which seems so neat.
Yeah, it was fun, and the BCM Fest parties were great. You know, we always had people that would Brian would get the set list and the finale concerts, and like he'd say to me, at this song, you have to go home and start the ham.
So we can eat it in the middle of the night.
Speaking of the set list, if we go to passim.org, Matt, I assume we can find out who's playing, what night, at what location,
Absolutely.
all that sort of stuff. Hanukkah, were you raising your hand to speak? Was that what you were just doing? That was
No,
shocking.
I just like the ham. Excuse me, I'd like to interrupt.
Yeah.
And we do have this big finale concert, at Somerville Theater,
Well,
right
tell
on
us.
the 18th.
You look pretty excited about it.
It's very exciting. We're doing this tribute to Brian, and Dervish, one of the most amazing Irish supergroups, is playing. I'm playing a little bit, and then Rakish, which maybe Lindsay could tell you about that.
Well, Matt, I'm turning this over to Matt.
They're the first recipient of the Legacy Fund, and there are going to be more artists that are going to be announced at the festival.
Oh, great.
And as well as we're planning another event to help put money back into that fund.
You know, I know we're going to play again, so we only have a few seconds left, but I wonder if there's something distinctive about Irish music. I remember at the service for Brian, at the end, there must have been, I don't know, 50, 75, 100 people performing on the stage or the altar, whatever you want to call it. It seems to me there's a communal thing about Irish music that's different. Maybe I'm wrong, where people go into bars and they start playing together, or there's this.
Music I do think brings people together. As I'm kind of listening to the news this morning, I'm getting all stressed out, and I'm just thinking when you're playing music with people, it kind of surpasses, even if people have different ideas and opinions about how things should be run, music brings that together, and it was a beautiful moment at Brian's funeral where all these musicians got on stage and just
incredible.
to celebrate his life and everything that he'd done for live music.
Hey, Hanukkah, you got to rejoin Adam Hendy in a second. What are you two going to be playing for us?
We're going to play a Strathspey and 2 reels. It's a Strathspey I wrote for Buddy McMaster, an amazing Cape Breton fiddler, and then 2 reels I learned from Jerry Holland, another great Cape Breton
So can you
fiddler.
gently put your headphones down while we talk for another minute to Lindsay and Matt as you guys get ready to play? Thanks.
Tell us again about how you get tickets for this event and what we do, Matt.
If people go to passim.org, there'll be links to all of the different ticket buying opportunities, because there are some separate individual, kind of a la carte, but then you can get a festival pass as well.
Did you even say the dates? Did we say the dates? What are the dates?
Next weekend.
It's Thursday through Saturday, which is 17 to 19,
whatever
maybe?
it is. Thursday through Saturday. Somerville Theater, the big culmination is Saturday night at the great theater. What a great venue for you guys. Somerville Theater. Okay, we've been waiting. Hanukkah Castle and Adam Hendy, welcome and thank you.
listening to Hanukkah Castle. Adam
More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, a hellscape that should only be the thing of movies has become a reality where movies are made in Los Angeles. We'll take stock of how the deadly wildfires are affecting the region. And even though we have more information coming at us than ever before, will we now be less informed with Facebook unfriending its fact-checkers? We'll take on these stories and other headlines on our Arts and Culture Week in Review today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
Live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President-elect Donald Trump returns to office in 10 days with a felony conviction on his record, but no punishment. In New York today, Judge Juan Merchan sentenced Trump to unconditional discharge 8 months after a state jury convicted Trump of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records linked to a hush money payment. Today, Merchan described the extraordinary nature of the protections afforded Trump.
Ordinary citizens do not receive those legal protections. It is the office of the president that bestows those far-reaching protections to the office holder. And it was the citizenry of this nation that recently decided that you should once again receive the benefits of those protections, which include, among other things, the Supremacy Clause and presidential immunity.
Trump appeared virtually. He maintains he's done nothing wrong and was the target of a witch hunt to derail his campaign. In Southern California, firefighters are making incremental progress against two of the biggest wildfires. One's 8% contained and the other 3%. The fires have resulted in at least 10 deaths. Thousands of structures are damaged or destroyed. And moments ago, Los Angeles area authorities issued another warning about looters. NPR's Greg Allen says at least 20 people have been arrested so far.
Mandatory evacuations are still in effect for a number of areas, and looting has become a significant problem. In Altadena, Tiandra Pitts says looters took her son's sneaker collection, her jewelry, and even her washer and dryer.
They take everything. We seen them doing it. How do you take that from somebody who already have enough disaster?
Communities throughout the region have imposed curfews. Los Angeles Sheriff Robert Lunas says deputies are stepping up enforcement.
If you are in one of these areas and you do not belong there, you are going to be subject to arrest.
National Guard troops have been deployed to help man checkpoints in vulnerable communities. Greg Allen, NPR News, Los Angeles.
The Supreme Court is hearing arguments today in a case involving TikTok's future in the U.S. Here's NPR's Windsor Johnston.
The appeal from TikTok challenges a Biden administration law that will ban the app in the United States. The platform argues that the law violates free speech for tens of millions of Americans, including many who use it to make a living. The Justice Department argues that the site poses a threat to national security because it could be used by foreign adversaries to gather data on American users. Legislation to ban the app in the U.S. was a bipartisan effort in both chambers of Congress last year. President-elect Donald Trump has pledged to save TikTok and has asked the court to delay the start date of the law until he takes office. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
From Washington, this is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. MassDOT is warning the public about a scan involving Easy Drive. Fraudsters are sending out text messages pretending to be from the tolling agency and requesting immediate payment for unpaid tolls. This is happening to my wife now. It includes a link to an unknown website. MassDOT says the targeted phone numbers appear to be chosen at random and not related to customer accounts. MassDOT says Easy Drive never asked for payment by text message. Anyone with questions about unpaid tolls can just check on the Easy Drive website, or they can call them directly. Coyotes are on the move this winter because it's mating season, and that means an increased chance of conflicts with humans and their pets. Connecticut State wildlife biologist Jeffrey Krutcar says that even though with a fenced-in yard, homeowners should monitor their dogs and cats while outside.
Coyotes are good jumpers. They can jump over fences as tall as 5 feet. So if you don't have a really, really tall fence, there's a chance a coyote could just jump over and go after your dog. Or they're also good diggers, so they could dig under the fence if they wanted to.
Krukar says coyotes will see cats and dogs under 20 pounds as a potential meal. Larger dogs may get attacked because they're seen as competitors. Coyote mating season lasts through March. Celtics host the Sacramento Kings at the Garden tonight. Sunny, upper 30s today, increasing clouds in mid-20s overnight. Light snow, low 30s tomorrow. We could see an inch or less in the Boston area, then sunny and upper 30s on Sunday. It's right now 36 degrees outside our studios here in Brighton. I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru, featuring the 2025 Forester with an updated exterior design and an 11.6-inch Starlink multimedia interface. Learn more at Subaru.com.
Mr. Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you very much. It makes me feel good, Jim. And streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here on Tuesday for the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell. She's going to be with us from 1 to 2 to take our questions and yours. And a little later on the show, former Governor Deval Patrick is going to zoom in to talk about this great event this weekend. We'll tell you all about it later. Hello, Jim.
That's next paragraph is yours.
Oh, okay. Our text prompt of the day, and the texts are coming fast and furious, Jim.
Sorry to hear that.
877-301-8970, based on a piece in the Boston Globe today by Meredith Goldstein about interrupting, something I may know a little bit about. Our question, how do you deal with the interrupter in your life? Are you an interrupter? And does interrupting drive you crazy? Or is it just a normal part of conversation? Text us at 877-301-8970. Hello again, Jim.
Normal part of conversation.
Kelly's laughing already.
We're joined, let her send in a text.
She can relate.
We're joined at the BPL desk by Kelly Crossley, host of Under the Radar with Kelly Crossley, Sunday nights on 89.7 and 6. You can also hear Monday Kelly commentaries on GB. You're allowed to applaud on GBH's Morning Edition. And she's a co-host for GBH's Culture Show, which airs daily at 2, right here at 89.7, including today's Week in Review from the library, which starts at 2 on the dot, which means we got to get the hell out of here really fast at the end of the show, Marjorie.
Yeah, well, I like to listen to the Culture Show, especially on Friday.
Well, I mean, away from our places is what I mean.
That's right. We have to hurry up and
Hi, Kelly.
disembark.
How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Great.
So we're going to put up this cover of the January 20th issue, which is Inauguration Day, by the way, Martin Luther King Day as well, of the New Yorker. The cover up there, which shows, of course, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, standing next to Donald Trump, I guess that they're swearing in. So I guess the question is, Callie, does $250 million buy you a lifelong, be it the right hand or the left hand of Donald Trump, or does Elon Musk get broomed fairly soon?
Well, if he gets broomed, it's not because of the money. He would like to keep him there, I am certain. What I think is interesting about the picture is that Trump's hand only has a little piece of the Bible or whatever, and Elon Musk's hand is all over the whatever they're swearing. And I'm like, if I were President-elect Trump, I would not like that, because at least let them share it.
That's right.
Well, wait a second. It's not just a little. Put it up one more time. Another thing we missed.
Yeah.
There's side eye.
Yeah.
Trump is looking at him with that side eye.
That is true.
Kind of thing. What is that?
The most important thing. Look how tiny Donald Trump's hand is.
Well, I'm just saying.
Remember that became an issue in campaign 2016. The size of Donald Trump's hands.
I'm just saying that in this picture, at least, Elon Musk's hand is huge and taking up most of the space.
That's right.
And that's all I'm saying. And he wasn't elected, as if nobody needs to be reminded of that. So if I'm President-elect Trump, that's going to get very annoying, if not already.
You know, everybody says that, and I guess the example that's chosen is when, Steve Bannon essentially became seen as, Trump's brain in the first Trump administration, and Bannon was gone, and not only is he gone, he's now an enemy on a lot of issues, including immigration. It's hard for me to believe, despite the $250 million is spent. Trump's not running again. He may never leave, but he's not running again. And the notion that this will not get old at some point, the press is going out of his way, as it should, with things like that. The Democrats, for once, have a consistent message when they call him President Musk to obviously make the, and how much is that aggravating? So I think it is only a
I will say
matter of time.
that, that $250 million, there's more where that came from.
That's another
right.
point,
So
yeah.
if he's motivated by the
That's
money,
a good point.
I
mean, not as a campaign thing, but to enrich Trump personally.
I would say
where that came from.
Wouldn't you say he is motivated by money and power? Those
Well,
are
he
the big
is,
things.
but also ego is a part of this.
That's right.
And, to be fair, anybody running for a top office has a healthy ego. But, in your face, one of the things that we have learned over time about President-elect Trump is that he doesn't like to be needled about not being in charge or not running the show. And this is all this says. That's what it's screaming.
Speaking of ego, I'm sorry, Margaret.
No, go ahead.
Speaking of ego, it's hard to say I love this story because it involves two people who are alleged to have done unimaginably horrible things, Sean Diddy Combs and Luigi Mangione, and everybody knows what they're both accused of. They're both in the same prison in New York, and a tension has arisen. I think it's a New York. It is a New York Post story. Explain what's going on in. Is this Rikers? Where are they, by the way? I'm not even.
I don't know.
Whatever is the facility, they're in the same facility in New York.
Sean Diddy Combs is, quote unquote, throwing tantrums about the attention that Mangione is getting because, we've seen all the attention after the killing of the United Healthcare CEO. Combs is just in case people are not paying attention, Combs has been arrested and accused of a wide variety of sex trafficking and other kinds of heinous sex-related crimes. And so that's what he's charged with, and he's waiting to go to trial. So, and there are multiple charges, so it's not just one person, one thing. So both of them are in there for horrible, horrible events. But Sean Diddy Combs apparently, speaking of ego, is very annoyed that this young whippersnapper has come in and taken all the attention inside the prison.
But the best part of the story is not just that. I assumed when I was reading this thing, the reason Mangione's a celebrity in prison is he's newer, and he's a murderer, and it was really high profile. Apparently, again, this is the New York Post, so you have to be cautious. Apparently, the reason is because so many of the inmates have complaints about their health care when they were out.
That's right.
That he is their de facto hero,
right?
Because he took on, allegedly, the issue of obscene health care behavior by places like United Healthcare. I mean, how odd and great is that?
I don't even know what to say. I will say I have your same concerns about the New York Post, but here's a point that I find fascinating. Combs and Mangione have the same legal team.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? But they've never met,
weird, right?
according to this, yeah.
Well, because
so we assume they got inside info.
Yeah,
on
and
this.
obviously Combs has got a ton of money, and Mangione's family has a lot of money too.
Right.
So they got rid of that initial lawyer that seemed a little bit inept that was first representing Luigi. By the way,
it's a
our staff's-
Metropolitan Detention Center at MDC in Brooklyn. I misread it. Yeah, thank you.
So we have two of our congresspeople from Massachusetts who are not going to go to Trump's inauguration. One is Ayanna Pressley here from Boston. She's not going. Representative Keating from the Cape is not going either. He says he's going because of his respect for the police officers that were injured and in some cases died within days of the riot. What do you think about this? Is this a good idea?
Well, first, let's just note that the information about Ayanna Pressley not going was first broken by Adam Riley on our news team.
Oh, great.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And so there was that. For her, a lot of people haven't figured this out yet, but Inauguration Day is the same day as MLK Day.
Oh, yes, indeed.
So Ayanna Pressley's like, I'm staying home, and I'm focusing on honoring Martin Luther King Jr., and that's my reason for staying away. I'm sure, there's larger reasons as well, but same thing. Keating has a different reason, but under the umbrella of I'm just put off by so much of what President-elect Trump represents that, I can't participate in the inauguration.
Well, I like it as a protest.
Well, except that when you read Keating's quote, where's the story from? The Globe? I don't remember.
Yes, he said, I cannot condone his inauguration day promise to pardon those who committed crimes at the Capitol.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
I totally agree. At the same point, he says, I intend to reach across the aisle and work with the administration whenever I can. So, and I guess that's your obligation,
of course,
to your constituents. And by the way, when you said there are 2 members, I don't know if they've polled the other members of the delegation. My guess is there will be more. I think a respectful boycott. They're not disrupting the proceeding, the swearing in or the inauguration. They're taking a stand, and I think that's an honorable, peaceful thing to do, and you make an important statement.
Well, I will say this, and you brought this up before. One man's or one woman's boycott is another person's protest, as we know. And when a Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was, formally put into place and signed off, how many Republicans boycotted that. So, some people...
That's right. I had forgotten that. Right. That's a great point.
Yes. So I'm just putting that out there. I have complete understanding for Keating and Presley and their reasons for doing it. But what comes with the job that they both have sometimes puts them in an uncomfortable situation, as does Ketanji Brown Jackson's official swearing in or whatever the president was doing when they boycotted that ceremony. So
the reason I'm not laughing at anything you say. I'm just laughing because when you used the word protest a minute ago, Marjorie and I talked about this time. Do you remember years ago when the Democrats in the House, when it was under Republican control, I hope I get this right, and Jamie, please check my facts here in case I get them wrong. Remember when there was the Speaker of the House, a Republican, refused to bring up a gun bill, and the Democrats, in a really radical move, something they never did a sit-in on the floor of the House.
Right.
On day one, Marjorie and I are cheering their courage and boldness until we find out the protest is going to end because the next day is July 4th holiday and they have to go home. That's the principle that guided this.
Right. And remember, John Lewis was involved, and they were like, we're standing up because John Lewis has done this in the past, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
He didn't go home for July 4th, I don't think, in his life, right?
Yeah.
Oh, John Lewis. Remember those scenes of crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and he was so courageous.
Well, I do remember them because they are captured in a fantastic documentary called Eyes on the Prize.
You would know
American
something.
Civil Rights Years, produced by the one and only sitting right here in this chair.
Exactly.
That's right. I mean, that was an incredible. That's right.
There you
won 1 million awards for that too. Well,
and an Oscar nomination. But I digress. Go ahead.
But doesn't affect you. One of the beyond Lewis, just as an aside, one of the thrills of my life is when he wrote a children's book, and he was at the county library, and I got to interview him for Greater Boston. But you know what the beauty of this? I mean, considering what he lived through and the horrors that he lived through, he also was such a playful.
He was.
Beyond how funny he was in our 20 minutes together. Have you guys seen the videos, I'm sure, of him dancing in his office that his staff... I mean, it's just... it's beautiful stuff.
His book was a graphic novel because he really wanted to connect with young people because he was a young person when he first got involved in the civil rights movement. So anyway.
Wasn't his skull fractured that day?
Yes.
It was,
And he almost died, We're
talking to Kelly Crossley.
So Donald Trump has refused to... say he's not going to send the military in to take over Canada, to merge them with the United States. Canadians don't really want it, but what do you make of this stuff?
At first I just said, just saying stuff. What does it really mean? But now he's been fairly consistent saying it. And then when you get to the level of talking about perhaps there's an economic kind of boycott or force I can bring to bear to make them capitulate, that's scary to me. It's the same language being used around Panama and Greenland, but there he suggested they might use military intervention. And, of course, in my mind, it looks very much like Putin deciding, I like Ukraine, I want to annex this land and this country, and so I'll just go in. So you don't know whether this is as part of a strategy to put people back on their heels, to say business as it has been conducted in the past politically will not be done so. And I have nothing to lose in this next iteration of my political career because I can't run again. And so I may do exactly what I say that seems at the moment to be, not only out of bounds, but just so... it's unfathomable, I guess is what I'm saying. But one thing I want to point out, though, the tariffs, which are very much something he's going to do, that's for sure. Now, whether or not the merger or trying to take over, make Canada the 51st state is another story. But the tariffs are something that's going to happen, and Canada has already come forward and said, well, we will impose tariffs on steel, and I think there's another fruit that they're going to do. And so good luck to you all on that.
You know what I like about this, though? We spent a lot of time on the show in the last 10 days talking about the cowardice of some of the most powerful people in America who are bowing down to Donald Trump, from the Jeff Bezoses of the world. And we could, the list is pretty much endless. We talk about it almost every day. The leaders of all three of these countries, I don't know if he's the king of Denmark, whatever the hell he is, prime minister, I think it's a king, reshaped the coat of arms so that Greenland is now a bigger part of the coat of arms. The new president, Sheinbaum of Mexico, responded to the whole thing about making it the Gulf of America. What did she say? Rename America Mexicana or something like that. And Justin Trudeau and the conservative member of parliament who is likely to succeed him as prime minister didn't take any crap from Trump. And in light of the fact that so many people are cowed by him, no matter how outrageous the thing is that he is doing, the fact that these three leaders stood up to him, I think is much more important than the underlying issue, because he's not about to take over Canada, and who knows what happens anywhere else. So good for them is the bottom line.
Well, what do they say in football? I know nothing about football.
Oh, well, then talk about it. Go ahead.
It's about getting to a certain place on the yard line, right?
Yeah,
and
that's
then
right.
you're closer, right? So if this is a strategy to say, maybe I'll never get down here till I'm erasing the line between America and Canada, but now I've pushed it forward. What's it called? You dropped the ball?
Fumble.
But no, it's a language. It's something.
Advancing.
I don't know. Somebody knows football that should know
Are you
this.
talking about moving further down?
Yeah. When you move and you drop the ball then you have to start from there, and you're already.
You have to get first down.
Yeah,
you have to get first down, 10 yards to get another first down. Okay.
Wow.
All right, it was a bad.
So who you picking in the Super Bowl, Callie? Oh my God.
So here's another story from the New York Post. But Kelly and I.
Before you go, Jamie just typed it. This is NPR. We don't know anything about sports.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know Notre Dame won last night. They're in the finals for the
That
national
was a pretty great game, by the way. Semifinals.
Down to the wire. Well, they're going to be in
the finals. Yeah.
They're going to be in the finals now.
Who are they playing against?
Either Texas or Oklahoma.
Texas or?
Oklahoma.
Ohio State.
But
it starts with an O, so it's close enough.
I was close.
It's close enough. It's
okay. So here's another story from the New York Post, which Jim has no interest in, but Callie and I do. So I'll talk about it with you, Callie.
Yes, okay.
I do have no interest, and nobody here has any
interest in this. You don't have to say anything
either.
about it at all. We'll discuss it. So apparently, Prince William is a man of steel.
Yeah.
He's seizing power from King Charles over there, who's dealing with his cancer issues. And of course, Prince William's also. Do we know what kind of cancer she has? Is it colon cancer?
I don't think he said. He's never said.
She's been dealing.
Oh, excuse me. You accuse me of not caring about. How many people in the audience of the library care about the fact that Prince William is seizing power from his father, the king? Oh my God!
There you go.
That is humiliating.
I mean, it's fun to watch the
me.
royals from afar. It's a little diversion on a tough weekend night. But what do you make of this? He's going after. He wants to trim money from the budget. He wants expenses monitored more closely for even his brother. Andrew. He's not high on his other brother.
It's not his brother. It's his uncle.
Well,
Andrew is Charles'
Oh, that's right, his
brother.
uncle. No, you're right. I'm sorry. And the Duke and Duchess.
Who was accused of being a rapist.
Right.
I mean, I would
He's
maybe
embarrassed the family.
shave his budget too, don't you think?
Yeah, he was involved with Epstein.
Yes.
But Harry and Meghan, I guess he's not keen on Harry and Meghan either. So what do you think of this?
Well, first of all, Andrew, according to this article, has been reliant on his brother's cash.
That's right.
Since 2019.
Oh, so sad.
So I think a lot of people and families could hear this and say, even if you're not, the person about to take over the throne in England, you can sit down with your brother. Some people did this at Christmas and said, you know what? You've been on my dime since 2019. It stops now. I just think that doesn't seem abnormal to me.
Excuse me. You two are having a serious discussion about this. Queen Elizabeth, this is true.
That's true.
Applied for low-income assistance to pay the heating bill at the castle or wherever they live. I mean, really,
Well,
these are grifters.
That was bad. But I think it's clear that Prince William has had enough of that grifting.
Yes.
And he's working really hard there with his wife and at all these events.
What has he given up?
Well,
Well,
he's
we
going
don't
to
know.
be he's going to be the king, so he
Exactly.
doesn't
So
have to
he's
give up
given up
anything.
nothing.
But
Exactly.
you don't think of Charles as a take charge kind of guy. You don't think of him as a man with steel.
Apparently, he is. He is like pretty stand-up guy, and he's the one that's pushed that environmental stuff forward.
He's been
in the
very
country.
good. Everybody
Very
made fun of
good.
him, but he was
Yeah.
right. He's big into
No.
plants. We know he's big into Camilla Parker Bowles.
Right.
And even though that wasn't nice,
That's nicely put, Marjorie.
Well,
I mean, he has some other interests that actually have helped to shape the interest of the country, because he had plenty of time waiting for his mom.
he did. Will she ever die?
Yeah.
You need to wait and wait and wait.
Yes.
Remember when he said he wanted to live in her trousers? Was that not his quote?
Yes, but
He did say that.
okay, that
Marjorie's
wasn't
moving ahead
That
here.
no, I'm not.
That interested
That wasn't
me.
nice.
I would like to move ahead because he said more than that. Let's
He
move
did.
ahead.
What did he say?
That.
I'm not saying.
He wanted to be your Tampax. That's what he said.
Tampon, but that's
tampon,
okay.
Tampax. But anyway, here's
He
the
did
thing.
say that. He did say
He
that.
did. But here's the thing.
Charles.
That not that he should be tormenting his wife, Princess Diana, who I think went into this marriage fairly naively, thinking that he really loved her. But there was something for a lot of women, at least for me, that here he was with this beautiful Diana, who was very young and very gorgeous, and she always looked beautiful. But he was really in love with an older woman who was not so beautiful. That it was a character thing for him. He really liked Camilla Parker Bowles. He eventually got to marry her. I mean, that was sort of a heartening moment, don't you think?
I'm trying to connect that to the Prince of Wales taking over the money.
Yeah, exactly. Marjorie doesn't give a damn about any of this except the gossip. Hey, before you go, can we do a similar thing before you, a serious thing? Well, Marjorie thinks that's serious. This was sort of stunning to me, but maybe explainable. There are 40 people on federal death row.
Yes.
The President of the United States, Joe Biden, who used to be for the death penalty, said he was going to abolish it as president, hasn't been able to abolish it, but commuted the sentence to life in prison without parole for 37. The 3 that he did not commute included Jahar Tsarnaev. And by the way, I don't want to get in a debate about this. Right. If you're against the death penalty, you're against the death penalty, in my opinion, and you commute them all, and if you're not, you're not, but that's for another day. 2 of the 37 who had their sentences commuted said, oh, no, I don't want a commutation. I want to stay on death row. Why'd they say that?
I was so shocked by this.
So was I.
I had no idea that for both of them, they believe that it'll mess up their appeal.
Yeah.
That if you're actually on death row, you get more attention and scrutiny than if you have a commuted sentence. Then I guess the assumption is, well, you really did it. And both of them are claiming innocence in their cases, and they don't want this commutation because they would like to be able to reclaim their innocence, assuming they win, and they want the intense scrutiny that comes with death penalty cases.
Yeah, and in case they lose, they're on death row.
Right.
But I guess they're willing to take. And it's unclear if they can refuse a commutation.
Apparently not. And the Justice Department's Office of the Pardon Attorney, that's the place where you'd hear, have said nothing. So I don't know.
Well, we have learned that because of racism, because of poverty, because of lousy representation for a lot of people that are poor, that get accused of horrible crimes, they didn't do it.
Yeah.
And the cops set them up, or the cops didn't do a good job, or the
Look at
lawyer
Massachusetts.
was falling asleep during the trial. I mean, all these horrible things you hear. So they may,
Well, that's true, but here you have an opportunity to be done with it. They're commuting the sentence.
But
and
never
they've
be free
chosen-
and never be.
Well, that's true, but this is, for most of the other ones, this is huge, because they never would have had an opportunity to do this. So, that had to be an interesting discussion with their lawyers and their families and whatever. But they're pushing on, and we'll see what happens.
What are you doing Sunday night, speaking of seeing what happens?
Well, we're having our LGBTQ roundtable to talk about a lot of stuff that's going on. One of the things in the new rules package for the new Congress, at the top of the 14 priorities that they've already announced is anti-trans legislation.
Really shocking,
that just
isn't it?
seems, so out of whack. So there's that. There is that really incredible study that was done here at the T.H. Chan School of Public Health at Harvard, which demonstrates, once again, that, knocks out the assumptions that a lot of people make that these adolescent kids who are having gender-affirming care are being overprescribed the hormone treatment. They say it is not happening. And they have the facts, the data, the details, all of that. We're taking a look at the lawsuit that was successful at the Defense Department for those who were discharged honorably because they were identified as part of the LGBTQ plus community. And
dishonorably.
Dishonorably.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to, by the Pentagon, was supposed to be fixing it, but it's been a very slow process. This new ruling means that the Pentagon has to step it up, and it has to happen pretty quickly, and they're feeling pretty good about that. And Mary Bonato,
oh gosh,
our own
she's
Mary
great.
Bonato, got the second highest civilian award from President Biden, and a lot more going on in that conversation. Second part of the show, we're talking about an original concert series put together by the Handel and Haydn Society called Crossing the Deep. And who knew? I did not know that George Friedrich Handel, his whole job was to write sacred music. It was paid for with money from the slave trade. Now, it's unclear that he understood that, but they've been able to trace that back. And so what they've done in this series is run parallel concert series and link them together, because while he was writing all of this sacred music based on, because he was able to, on monies from the slave trade, over here in the New World, the people who were enslaved were creating these Negro spirituals. So they've put this together in a fantastic concert to show, the linkages, the commonality, and also to bring people a better understanding of both of the music genres.
I didn't know you had a 5-hour show Sunday. It sounds great.
Well, we always do in-depth, in-tune, and in-touch.
Hey, amen.
I like that.
Callie Crossley,
in-depth,
Sunday night.
in-tune, and in-touch. That's what we say about Callie Crossley.
We don't say it about us, that's for sure.
Okay. Thank you, Callie Crossley. Callie Crossley is host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch on Sunday nights. You don't want to miss it, 89.7 at 6 o'clock. You can also hear her Monday Callie commentaries on GBH's Morning Edition. I've heard you Saturday afternoons, too, your show being replayed, which is great. I think it's at 5 o'clock or something like that. Yeah, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, something like that on Saturday afternoons. Okay. Callie is also co-host of GBH's Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 o'clock right here on 89.7, including today's Week in Review, which happens right after our show. No news. You go right from us to the Week in Review.
For football fans, the season can feel like a soap opera with tales of heartbreak, rivalry, and revenge. If the playoffs were a drama, the biggest plotline this year would be,
can the Chiefs finally lose? And if they do lose, what is the reason why? Because the scriptwriter's got to have a pretty good reason for Kansas City not to go all the way.
I'm Scott Detrow, breaking down the top storylines of the season on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the Museum of Science, where their Fun for All Ages seasonal exhibit is now open. All aboard Trains at Science Park features more trains, activities, and magic. More at mos.org. And Trinity Rep, presenting Someone Will Remember Us. This moving new play is based on the real-life testimonies of U.S. military veterans, a Gold Star family, Iraqi civilians, and refugees living in Rhode Island. Opens January 23rd. TrinityRep.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Thank you all. It's been a great audience, by the way. Thank you.
It has been a great audience.
Warm. Live at the library, stream at youtube.com/GBH. Final reminder about our text prompt at 877-301-8970, based on a piece in the Globe today by the person who most people call Meredith Goldstein. Marjorie, of course, calls her Meredith Vieira.
I've gotten
only
better.
known her 30 years about interrupting.
Better.
How do you deal with the interrupter in your life? And are you an interrupter yourself? And does interrupting drive you crazy, like it drives me crazy when you know who does it? Or is it just part of normal conversation? We're going to read some of these.
We are overwhelmed
you are,
by text.
Just before one. We're joined now at the desk by our favorite local woman, that'd be Sue O'Connell, co-publisher of Bay Windows of South End News, political commentator on NBC 10 Boston. Good day, Sue O'Connell.
Good day.
You
know, when I'm interrupted, I just stop talking. At the third time I'm interrupted, I just stop talking.
Wow. Is that what you do?
Yeah, and I just look at them because there's two. I think Meredith's column, which you're going to talk about, was so great.
It's great.
There are different reasons. Sometimes you're just enthused and excited, like Jim is, and you want to like support what the person is saying.
Not going to be around that much longer. Yeah,
right, and then the other reason is that you don't care what the other person is saying. You only want to talk about what you're saying.
That's not me.
And when you're talking to those people, you might as well just not talk.
So
back.
let me just be clear.
No, let's not be clear.
Let's all interrupt each other at the same time. time.
Filled in for me with Jim. You spend much of the show
don't say anything.
in silence.
I don't say anything. I just stand there quietly.
Okay. So before we get to some other stuff going on, did you have any particular reaction to this morning's Judge Merchant finding Trump to be a felon, but with no real penalties except being a felon?
Well, I'm just happy now when I refer to Trump as a felon online, people won't argue back that he hasn't been sentenced yet, as the small, tiny difference without a distinction definition of what a felon is. All of this is too little, too late, and, it is what it is. I'm a little numb around Trumpism stuff right now, but yes, he's held accountable in some way. I think it's, to try to be fair from it, it may not be a crime that's worth jail time. On the other hand, it should have been disqualifying for him to be considered as president of the United States for people voting for him. But, here we are.
We're talking to Sue O'Connell. So, Sue, we've all been watching these videos of the fires in L.A. and around L.A. that are just unimaginably horrible. A couple of angles we wanted to talk about today. One is talk about lies and misinformation. Marie Bartiromo, who's another one of the Trump sycophants on Fox Business, here she is asking out loud whether migrants should be blamed for the L.A. wildfires. Here she is.
But I'd like to know what kind of investigation is underway in terms of outside agitators. I mean, all of these people who've come into America and wanting to disrupt our lives. I would like to see an investigation to ensure that we know that there were no outside agitators starting these fires.
Sure, and analogous to the guy who killed all those people in New Orleans was an outside agitator from below the border. Of course, he wasn't. He was an American citizen.
And she was a big election stolen advocate for months and months.
And she was. My fear about these kinds of things from her and all the other Trump sycophants and Trump himself is everybody believes them, and there's no set of facts after the fact that ever disabuses them of this.
So we're just going to keep saying that when you hear President Trump say someone should be investigated, or when you hear someone on Fox News or on social media saying we should see if there are instigators, or maybe we should see if migrants or undocumented immigrants did this, they're just drumming up problems, right? Yes, we should investigate what happened to the fire and why the fire started, and yes, they will. And anyone who is out there now saying they know what happened or blaming anyone is lying, right? And by using the word should or asking it in a question, it just is a way of spreading dis and misinformation. So, also the whole idea of how inept some people are saying the fire department is because they're not using seawater to fight the fire, which is the most inane idea on the face of the earth. Name one fire we've had in the history of mankind that we fought with seawater. We haven't, because there's salt in it. And although it might put the fire out, it will corrode all of the equipment. It will ruin all of the farmland that's in California, and all of the water with the salt in it will run off into the freshwater places. So not only will you have a devastation by fire, you'll have a devastation by salt poisoning. So all of these people online who are doing this right now, the best thing you can do is to ignore them. If you're on Facebook and your family members are posting, well, the migrants started the fire in California, ask them for a fact. Ask them who's doing it.
Well, I think we do have some facts.
That was another thing. DEI was blamed. A declaration that supposedly, according to Donald Trump, Gavin Newsom, the governor, should have signed was the problem. But there was no such declaration. That was made up as well.
Right. And the people who have been doing this, the people who are accusing and making this stuff up, have been ignoring the warnings of the climate crisis for 40 years. Okay?
Yeah.
And there is definitely no argument that climate changes have contributed to what's happening. May not have caused it, may not be the only reason, but every time someone is trying to blame someone else for something that has happened, especially when it comes around the environment, it's because they don't want to be held accountable for never talking about climate crisis, and now here we are.
Okay, so you said let's wait till we get the facts. From my read, and you may disabuse me of this, we know enough of the facts to know the Democratic mayor of Los Angeles should not have left the country.
Absolutely.
When she left the country to go to the swearing in of the president of Ghana. Very slow return. We criticized Ted Cruz correctly when he went to Cancun during those horrible storms in Texas, even though the voters a few years later apparently didn't give a damn. Here is an incredible back and forth, and I wish we had the video. There's a Sky News reporter who's repeatedly asking LA Mayor Bass about her response to the devastating fires. You will not hear her response because she literally just stands there silent, staring off into the distance. Here it is.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster?
I think the Elon Musk question was beyond over the line. I think every other question was totally appropriate. She answered nothing. And by the way, she could have answered, in my opinion, the cuts. She cut out of an $800 million budget, $17 million.
And the budget cuts haven't gone through yet, which is the other part of it.
And so,
yeah,
but
great point.
It is fairly clear to me, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that she was aware of the fire risks, the winds, all this sort of stuff. And then finally, even when she got back late from Ghana, the Los Angeles government put out warnings to the people way after the facts were known by people in government. Is that fair criticism?
Yeah, this is a horrendous behavior by the mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles, and every mayor in every city, every town manager. We've said it in the past. If the trash isn't getting picked up, if there's a major snowstorm and the snowplows don't work, if the basic running and protection of the city doesn't happen, the mayor is failing. This is obviously a major disaster beyond the trash not getting picked up. But the fact that she didn't turn right around and come back, or be ready to speak to the people of Los Angeles about what's happening and what steps they're taking.
Or not go.
I mean, I get that.
Joe Biden didn't go to see the Pope, even though
and Gavin Newsom didn't go to the Jimmy Carter's funeral. You have to be there. You have to be showing face.
Why didn't he go to Jimmy Carter's funeral?
Because of the fires.
Because of the fires, okay. But this is, to me, is all side stuff. I mean, the bottom line from everything I've read is that wildfires in the wild are different than urban fires. So they're not equipped to deal with these urban fires. It would take a huge project of millions and billions of dollars to equip the cities for this, to fight this kind of fire.
And people have been saying for decades that all you need in that Los Angeles is a spark and some winds.
But I guess the issue is the big one that you mentioned. It was the hottest year on record last year, the hottest in 125,000 years, worst drought than they've ever had in California.
Then why isn't the mayor saying that?
Well, she could say that.
She should be saying that.
Well, other people are saying it.
No, but she's the mayor of Los Angeles, and she's not taking
it.
responsibility or informing the public. This is also her opportunity to fix the mis and disinformation.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just take it from there.
She
doesn't have to say all of those things. She can just recognize the firefighters who are working hard. She can recognize and re-emphasize that people have to evacuate when they're being told to evacuate, and she can correct the record about the budget issue. She didn't do any of that.
No,
she
you're
just
right.
stood there like a post.
But I just think sometimes dumping on Newsom, dumping on her, the issue is we're not dealing with climate change, and as we can see...
Can I tell you, dumping is
That's
totally
not dumping.
Unfair
It's holding an elected official accountable.
Holding
her
accountable, yeah.
Yeah, she abandoned...
They're both true. Your point is true, and Sue's point is
valid.
But
I guess had she been there and not gone anywhere in terms of the damage done, it would not have mattered.
Well, we wouldn't be talking about her then. See, this is the point.
No. I don't agree with that. I don't agree. I'm not saying no, because the notice that they gave, experts that I've read, Tuesday morning is when she gave the first blast email or whatever you call it, blast text. Could have happened a couple days earlier. I don't know what could have been saved. People, by the way, how many times people you see on CNN saying, I lost everything my mother left me. I lost every photograph of my kid. I lost all. I mean, maybe at least they could have evacuated in timely fashion and gotten something. I don't mean she could have stopped the fire. And I'm not suggesting your point is not huge, but they both are. Leadership matters. I think it does.
Like I said, that's all true, but it just seems to me we're not dealing with the central issue that is going to cause the whole world.
Did you say the same thing about Ted Cruz when he left Texas during the freeze? Did you think that they shouldn't have asked him why he left?
I said Ted Cruz should not have left during the freeze. That's absolutely true. But Ted Cruz is such a creepy guy on so many fronts. I was really ready to criticize him for a lot of the things he did.
An unrelated topic. Lynn, watching on YouTube, says, never mind Sue's opinion on Trumpism and all these things. Is she worried about it being wolf mating season?
Oh, my God.
Can I tell you something? I just signed up for the Cambridge, City of Cambridge, where I live, newsletter. You get it twice a day now. Gives you all the updates from trash. The first one I got, I think I said this on the other day. This is honest to God true. The second lead story was notifying the people of Cambridge that it is coyote mating season.
It's great.
So
Can't
you
wait.
freaked out?
No, I mean, I am almost fully armed when I leave the house now in the morning. I'm not kidding. I have a baton that I can open, which I've been carrying for years.
You flick it open.
You flick it open and it opens. I have a whistle. I have a flashlight. And I think that's it. I mean, if I have to have anything else to go out in my neighborhood to protect me from wildlife in Roxbury, where I live, by the way.
Urban area.
And then I've had the pit bulls I have to deal with. I've had 2 pit bull run-ins. And I've got the turkeys, which we all share that horror. So,
by the way, if people don't know the story, Google it in the Globe. This is where the term local woman, which is how the Globe described the star of so many venues.
So many.
Did
Sue O'Connell.
the turkeys go after Maud, your dog?
They just come at you. Know how the turkeys
are.
They just come after you.
Yeah,
they go after men's crotches.
They go for men's crotches. That's
right
Jim's
in
claim,
there.
and he's sticking to it.
I'm telling you right now.
Okay, we just talked about with Callie Crossy the issue of trans issues being at the top of the list, incredibly, for many Republicans. Now we learn that a federal judge in Kentucky struck down Biden's efforts to expand protections for trans kids. I don't know what to say about this. It's a very horrible time to be a trans kid in the United States of America.
Yes, and not only did they knock down that, they knocked down protections for pregnant students, and they also knocked down protections for other students who were in there as well. So this was a full, just making our most vulnerable students in public schools more vulnerable. And the issue here, which is a fascinating one, is, we could get into the arguments of Title IX and gender expression and protecting people based on their gender. All of that is in play here. But this federal judge, and this is a nationwide ruling because it's a federal judge, decided that it was a violation of the First Amendment rights of public school officials and teachers to force them to use a pronoun that they believe did not fit the legal pronoun of their students. So basically saying that if I told the teacher that I'm a he and my name is Sam, the teacher can refuse to do it, to call me he or Sam or by any name because it's a violation of their First Amendment rights, which I think is a reach. And it's, again, we say it over and over again, a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of individuals in public schools are trans or identify as trans, and the Republicans and the conservatives are making a huge deal out of all of this and making them a target, and this basically does nothing but make our most vulnerable students in public schools more vulnerable. And I don't know what the redress is. I think that's it for this. I don't know enough about the law.
Nor do I.
But I think that's it. So,
before we move to the next thing, this relates to this when we played this Bartiromo sound. Are there migrants who caused this? An anonymous texter says there was a news story which I missed on NPR this morning that a group of undocumented Latino immigrants went to the Altadena fire to use their own supplies. They were gardeners. Buckets, hoses to help put out the fire since there was a lack of firefighters. They were very humble and sincere. Zoe, our colleague, listened to it, the report. She caught some of that. This is Zoe speaking. I caught some of that on my drive-in this morning. One guy stayed behind to protect his house, and after battling for 4 hours alone, he looks up and notices a line of undocumented immigrants are at his side helping him there. So I hope she talks about that tonight on her show. Sue, on a lighter note, and you were all over this. Where are you from again?
I'm from Revere.
Exactly.
Surely have Revere, too, not just
There
Revere.
is a calendar following in a line of not dissimilar calendars over the years. I think the first one was in the UK. Mirren or something? All right. What's happening in Revere that you covered like a rug?
Yes, because as a political reporter, these are the kind of things that I like to do. So my friends over at the Jack Satter House, which is the great elderly housing development, which is right next to Kelly's Roast Beef on Revere Beach. It's been there for decades. The ladies of the social group there, headed by Roxanne, decided to do a nudie-type calendar of themselves to raise money for their social excursion. So if they want to have a bus to take them somewhere or to go somewhere, this money would help pay for that and also help people who couldn't pay to go along with them. So they posed, and there are 12. There we go up on the screen. There's Miss, that's Miss December.
That's great.
And she's they're in various stages of dress or undress. There's one working in the garden. She said she actually wasn't a good gardener, so they had her in the garden. And they're just these wonderful photos of women 70 plus. I think the eldest was 95, who posed for this calendar. And let me tell you, I talked to I think 8 of them the other day at the Jack Satter House, and they are a riot, and it was just so much fun. I could have spent the entire day there with them.
Here's a little bit of Sue's interviews with these spectacular seniors who are featured in this calendar, and she obviously did the interview for NBC 10 Boston.
My husband said, "Are you nuts?" I said, "No, we're so young. We're young at heart. We're not ready to go in the rocking chair and knit."
I think it's fabulous.
Yeah, my favorite was one I asked, did you expect, if I had told you when you were 20 that you would be posing at 90 in a pinup girl calendar? And she said, yes, I would think I was indeed the party girl of the bunch. So you can get the calendar. They're doing a reprint because they've run out. If you Google Jack Satter House calendar, it will lead you to the link to buy a calendar. But
SATTER, and Hannah, our colleague, ordered a calendar this morning. I mentioned the story. The original one
2003 movie, Calendar Girls.
Yeah.
And it said it was based on a true story about a group of women in Great Britain who produced this nude calendar to raise money for leukemia research. And the late great critic Roger Ebert called it very slightly risque. Helen Mirren and Julie Waters were in that original one.
What I loved about it, too, is I asked them, this didn't get into the piece, though. I don't know about you, but whenever I run into someone on Facebook or in real life who I went to high school with, I'm horrified at how old they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then my daughter reminds me that I'm the same age that they are. So I asked them, when you did this, did you look at yourselves as who you feel like you are inside, not just how the world sees you? And they said, yes, we had to keep telling our adult kids and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren that we actually still are like 16 inside. So it was great. It was a great...
before you leave, we only have a minute and a half left. You mentioned that this house is right next door to Kelly's on the beach. I don't quite understand. Is Kelly's all being sold?
Yes, it's already sold. I had some Kellys yesterday.
Okay, so what's the deal?
They were sold to a private investment company, I believe, and it's already been done.
All these years.
All these years. Yes, I mean I've been going to it my whole life. I remember the first Kelly sandwich that I had when I was 4. It was very exciting. My favorite thing about Kelly's is when I was in high school in the 70s, they only hired boys to work at Kelly's. You couldn't have a girl work there, and they had no cash registers. So these dum-dums that I was in math class with, you would walk up with your fried clams and they would tell you how much it was plus the sales tax. And I'm like, I don't think any of this is true. But they have registers now. I believe they hire women now, but they have changed hands. They say they're going to keep it the way that it is.
So how good is Kelly's roast beef?
It's excellent. I mean, I had some yesterday. I had some clam chowder yesterday. We used to go to Beachmont Beef as well. That's no longer there, but those were the 2 driving roast beef places. But it is a monument, Kelly's.
So it's going to live on, right?
The best clam chowder I ever had was Legal Seafood when Roger Berkowitz owned it. But let me tell you, I am currently eating clam chowder from the Newsfeed Cafe, and it is spectacular. Yes. Have you ever had it, either of you two?
Yes, it is.
It is really, really, really good.
Yeah. So we'll see if Kelly's changes, but
I would eat it, but I don't like clams.
Well, then you wouldn't eat it.
I wouldn't eat it. That's right. Okay.
You know what's going on, by the way, because of you? I asked Roger Berkowitz to come in with clam chowder, but then I realized you didn't eat clams.
He's going to bring fish chowder.
He is about to release for his new company.
That's
it's called
good.
Roger's Fish Company, I think.
Yes.
Fish chowder, which you do eat, and as soon as he does it, he's bringing it here, and he's going to bring portions for everybody in the audience.
Well, you can eat the clam chowder without eating the clams. You can eat the
that's called milk.
And the potatoes. There's potatoes
milk
in
and potatoes. We're back to the potatoes.
That's what I love. The buttermilk and the potatoes. Skip the clams.
So it's good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Thank you, Media Maven Sue O'Connell. Sue O'Connell is our media maven, our favorite local woman, co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News, a political commentator for NBC 10 Boston, and ever sensible Sue O'Connell. Thank you, Sue. Coming up after a quick break, we're going to read your texts about interrupting if Jim can keep quiet long enough for me to read the text. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, LGBTQ members of the new Congress are historic firsts, a groundbreaking study on gender-affirming care, and new parental protections expanded after 40 years. It's our LGBTQ plus news roundtable. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Acera School, where gifted kids can learn without limits through passion-fueled STEAM projects and above-grade-level curriculum. Applications are due January 15th. aceraschool.org. And H&H, the Handel and Haydn Society. Parallel musical traditions spanning the Atlantic come to life with the sensational Crossing the Deep. January 17th and 19th at Jordan Hall. Tickets at handelandhaydn.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Margery Egan. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH. Our friend Meredith Goldstein at the Globe just published a column about people who interrupt, how to deal with them, how annoying it can be. We asked you to text us your thoughts on people who do interrupt. We thought this would be a perfect opportunity to address the issue. It's always hanging in the air here. Marjorie can never stop seeming to interrupt me, and I'm here to say it's a perfect opportunity. I'm not troubled by it at all, Marjorie, so just keep going. What are the texters saying? By the way, Josh from Waltham texts and says, Marjorie could have starred in Girl Interrupted. Thank you very much. What do you have
Very
there?
good.
Thank you.
Okay, Lance and Lynn says, we like to call him Browdus Interruptus.
Oh, that's so funny. God, I am laughing.
Joe in Clinton says, my daughter's name is Ava, so her nickname is Ava Interruptus at dinner time. What do you think of that name, Jim Interruptus?
Thank you. Okay, Margie's so happy.
Here's one from the Reverend Irene Monroe from All Revved Up. She said,
Irene texted?
Yes, she did. She says, I am perceived as an interrupter. I've been asked to stop, but I simply can't help myself. I see it not as interrupting, but as quote-unquote passionate engagement. And then there are those moments when I think Marjorie and Jim are all wrong, and Emmett occasionally is wrong as well. Okay, here's another one, Jim. A lot of them are aimed at you. I don't know why that could be. Here's another one. I'm texting in for a friend, says this texter. My coworker, we'll call him Jimbo, always interrupts me when I have something profound to say. I get back at him by mentioning how he slithers around the Whole Foods salad bar, wears whale pants, and has his dead mother's ashes in his Volvo trunk. Now it's a Tesla trunk.
It is a Tesla trunk.
Now here's someone that's defending you, Jim.
I have a frunk in the front of the Tesla. Do you know what's called a frunk?
Yeah, because they're in the front as well as in the back.
Yes,
that's very clever.
Okay, fine.
Okay, here's one that's defending you, as I said. Okay, anonymous. Fine. Jim and Marjorie are a great pair. Remove one and there's diminishment.
Thank you.
Jim may be famous for interrupting, but if you check the tapes, he always cedes the floor to Marjorie when they chime in simultaneously.
Yes, I do.
Always. So Marjorie expects it and takes the floor. Even just now, this was earlier today, as I typed, he said, sorry, Marjorie, go ahead, always. And that's very true, Jim.
That's really moving.
You always do this. And, you know, some people are crediting you, including Judith in Framingham, for evolving.
How many are you going to read of these, like 100 or what?
No, this is the last one.
Okay, good.
That you've evolved over the years. You've gotten better. So there you go, Jim.
Marjorie and I taught a class once at, we won't say where, but an esteemed institution.
Harvard Business School.
And at Harvard Business School. And it was actually great, our presentation. First woman raises her hand and said, I listened to your show. Actually, I listened to your show. I don't listen to it anymore. Why not? Because I just can't stand listening to Jim interrupt. And she says, what's your response? And I figure better than me answering, I go, Marjorie, why don't you respond, knowing that she's going to defend me and say something funny? And she turns to this woman, she says, it is a real problem. It is. That was great.
Yeah.
And we rode back in the lift together, and that was really a wonderful time.
First of all,
for
Jim
me
didn't
and
talk to me for 6 months after
That is
that.
true, by the
and
way.
this incident happened 15 years ago.
No, it's actually
and he's
20
still,
years ago.
20 years ago. 20, even worse.
No, I've gotten
and
over it,
you've gotten over it?
obviously.
No, I
I
would
have.
say he has not gotten over it. So there you go.
You should read Meredith's column. It's actually great.
It's very good.
It's great.
Because a lot of us do interruptions.
Yes, we do.
Anyway, coming up after the 1 o'clock news, former Deval Patrick zooms in.
He's not former Deval Patrick.
He's former governor.
He still is.
Deval Patrick. That's
Yeah,
right.
thank
He's
you.
You can access thousands of hours of PBS programs online with GBH Passport. If you're already a member, just register online today or become a member and sign up instantly at gbh.org/passport.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Bryant University, committed to helping students transform their futures by empowering them to leverage their ambition and work together to become purpose-driven leaders. Learn more at bryant.edu. And Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting Daphnis Prieto's COC Quartet, live at Berkeley Performance Center on Saturday, January 24th. This dynamic ensemble blends Cuban rhythms with contemporary jazz. CelebritySeries.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President-elect Donald Trump has been sentenced for 34 counts of falsifying business records in New York. NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports Trump does not face prison time, fines, or other penalties.
New York Judge Juan Merchan today announced his decision in a Manhattan courtroom.
This court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge.
With Trump about to assume the highest office of political power, Merchan and prosecutors agreed the sentence imposing the least disruption was unconditional discharge. Still, the criminal conviction remains on Trump's record. Trump and his lawyers, several of which are tapped into positions in his administration, have vowed to appeal the conviction. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, New York.
A 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfews in effect in mandatory fire evacuation zones of Southern California, where at least 20 people have been arrested on suspicion of looting. L.A. County Sheriff Robert Luna warned of swift punishment for violators.
I've given direction that if somebody's caught doing this, they are not going to get cited and released. They're going to get booked. We are not screwing around with this. We don't want anyone taking advantage of our residents that have already been victimized.
The two most destructive fires are the Palisades and Eaton fires. The state's insurance commissioner has announced homeowner protections from non-renewals and cancellations by insurance companies for 1 year under a moratorium law. This also covers owners whose homes were spared from damage. The Biden administration is granting an 18-month extension to many Salvadorans legally residing in the U.S. under temporary protected status, a decision affecting about 234,000 out of roughly 900,000 people under TPS protection. President-elect Trump takes office in 10 days, and he has repeatedly announced plans to order mass deportations and slash the TPS program. The U.S. has announced an increase in the bounty for information leading to the arrest or conviction of Venezuela's authoritarian president, Nicolás Maduro, on the day he's been sworn in for a third term. Maduro has been widely accused of rigging Venezuela's latest election. Manuel Rueda has a story.
Maduro struck a defiant tone after he received his presidential sash, saying he had defeated efforts by the United States to oust him.
El pueblo de Venezuela le ganó al imperialismo.
The people of Venezuela have defeated imperialism and its diplomacy of deceit, he said. Maduro claims he won Venezuela's latest election with 51% of the vote, but his government never published any evidence of the vote count. Hundreds of people have been arrested in protest against Maduro's re-election, including opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who was detained briefly on Thursday.
You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts aid workers are on the ground in California helping victims of the ongoing wildfires in and around Los Angeles. Jeff Hall is with the American Red Cross of Massachusetts. He says so far they've deployed 5 local volunteers.
They're going to be supplying food, water, comfort, and
just helping them deal with what's going on in this tragic situation.
Hall says the Massachusetts volunteers are working nearly 18-hour shifts at shelters across L.A. He says they may send more local volunteers to California in the days ahead. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey signed a law Wednesday that bans the roadside sale of animals as well as the sale of puppies and kittens under 8 weeks old. This new law extends the existing law pertaining to pet shops and shelters to all individuals. State House News Service reports that violators could be fined for breaking either new law. However, the roadside sale ban, which also applies to other places like parks and parking lots, outdoor markets, does not apply to the transfer of dogs and cats to licensed shelters or animal rescue organizations or municipal animal control facilities. In sports, the Celtics host the Sacramento Kings at the Garden tonight. In the forecast, sunny and upper 30s today, increasing clouds mid-20s overnight. And we're looking at some light snow moving into the area tomorrow, low 30s. The region will see an inch or less of fluffy white stuff. Sunny and upper 30s on Sunday. It's 37 in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BetterHelp, committed to helping clients with issues ranging from relationship challenges and goal setting to grief and depression. Learn more at betterhelp.com/public. This is NPR.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We want to do a programming note. We're going to be back here on Tuesday. We're going to be joined by Attorney General Andrea Campbell for another hour of Ask the Attorney General, when she'll take our questions and yours. Hello again, Jim.
She'll be here from 1 to 2, by the way, on
1 to
Tuesday
2
at the library. Hey, Marjorie. We're joined now at the library by Mari Paris-Jeffries. He's the president and CEO of Embrace Boston. Also with us via Zoom is Deval Patrick. He, of course, is the former 2-term Democratic governor of Massachusetts, also served as U.S. Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Division under President Clinton, also a business leader and a beekeeper. Governor Patrick is among those being honored as a 2025 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King honoree by Embrace Boston at a fabulous event on Sunday, January 19th, along with his wife, another pretty good person, former First Lady Diane Patrick. Amari will tell us about the other honorees. For information, to book tickets, whatever, go to embraceboston.org. Governor Patrick, Amari, it's great to see you both. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Governor.
I had a momentarily chill go down my spine when I heard you say the monthly Ask the, and then I...
By the way, this started...
I remember those so well with Governor Patrick.
He was the first one. How many regrets do you have about that, Governor Patrick? 8 years of torture. What?
Zero. I loved the questions from the callers. Even better. And even more than I love you guys.
Oh.
Well, I remember I was still at the Boston Herald then, and I would get directives on what I was supposed to ask the governor, when I went to, and all the Herald wanted to do was find out about details, police details. That was a big crusade. I was embarrassed the numbers of time I had to ask you, Governor, about details, but you changed the rules.
And got zero credit from the Herald. But please, let's talk about Embrace Boston.
It's good that it's lingering with you, Governor.
Yes.
I'm sorry. What'd you say, Amari?
It seems like a simpler time back then. We were
It was.
talking about details.
Simpler time, police details.
But in a moment of seriousness, we're joking. It was literally, we went to the chief of staff of Governor Patrick when even before he had been sworn in, proposed the idea. They said yes, and it began a tradition that spread. Attorney General. We had a police commissioner for a while who was doing it regularly, and Mayor of Boston. All because of Governor Patrick's willingness to do it. So in any case, good to see you both.
Well, before we get back to the governor, one of the honorees, Imari, tell us what exactly this is, what's happening on the 19th. What's the event?
It's the 3rd annual Embrace Honors MLK event. And, we decided that we need to celebrate MLK with joy, celebration of significant figures. Everyone we are honoring will be memorialized on our next monument. And these are people who were active between 1995 to 2020. And so Governor Patrick and First Lady were gracious enough to let us honor them. They were a part of the ceremony actually all 3 years, Governor Patrick was the keynote speaker at the unveiling of the Embrace, and so this is the second year of that unveiling, and so we're very fortunate to be able to honor Governor Patrick. He's been a role model and a hero for me, and so every time I feel like I'm geeking out, I'm a fanboy every time I'm with him. I got to be with him a couple of months ago, and I was trying to keep my cool. So to be with him, to celebrate him and his legacy is so important to us.
By the way, there are a bunch of great nominees. You check it out, but we should say selfishly here, the ones that mean a lot to us, in addition to Governor Patrick and some of the others. Irene Monroe and her wife, Dr. Thea James, are among them, and we're really excited about it. So what does this mean to you, Governor Patrick? It's not the first thing you've been honored for. What's it mean to you?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Amari for his comments, but especially for his extraordinary leadership. And I think what he and the team were able to do to lift up the legacy of Dr. King and Mrs. King here in Boston, for us and all of us really, has been incredibly important. And then to be kind of stewards of that legacy, and by that I don't mean stewards just of the monument, but of the spirit of the work of Dr. King and Mrs. King has been so inspiring. So we are, Diane and I, incredibly touched to be among the honorees. I will speak for her and say she loves these events, in part because she can wear shoes she's comfortable in. I will say on behalf of both of us that we love these events because we feel sometimes like we're rediscovering the community. It's just a huge crowd of young talent and energy being joyful and understanding that joy is not an escape. It's a source of strength.
A lot of young talent, and Marjorie and I will be there too. Okay.
I just want to mention, because I spoke to Amari before this. I'm glad, Governor Patrick, that your wife Diane is happy about the sneakers requirement part of this. But a lot of us are concerned because a woman's legs look a little bit better when they.
Why are you talking to me? Talk to Amari.
I just told him. I don't know. You wear a beautiful dress and you get the sneakers on. I'm worried about the calves. You know what I mean? The
Should
calves.
you give her dispensation, or what do you do here?
No, I gotta wear them.
She's saying you have nice legs. I think.
Hey, Governor
Jim
Patrick.
has his hookahs. What do you call those sneakers you wear?
Hookahs you do something else with. I'm going to put you on the spot. I hope you don't turn this down. It just occurred to me as we're saying there's a dress code for this thing, dress up, but wear kicks. Would you be willing to tell, you mentioned your wife about 3 times there, would you be willing to tell the story about the first time you met your wife and what you were wearing?
Oh, really?
Oh, come on. Please.
Oh, this is a great story.
You can do a quick version. Go ahead.
We were set up at a Halloween party in Los Angeles 43 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was organized, I did not realize, so that we could meet. She knew that, I didn't know. I was told to come in costume. She was not. And I showed up in a caftan I'd brought back from Africa and with a spear and my face painted. No, you couldn't do this now. I shouldn't have done it then, but it turns out I was the only one there in costume.
Was she really impressed by this guy?
Can we talk about Embrace?
Okay, fine.
It worked, though. It worked.
Obviously, it did. That's right.
Hey, speaking of all these key players, this year, and it doesn't happen often, Martin Luther King Day happens on the inauguration of not just a president, but Donald Trump. How are you feeling about that, Amari Parrish-Jeffries?
It's important for us to celebrate joy and to recharge our joy battery given the year that's ahead. One of the things I want to mention on that Friday at the Embrace, there is a rally, the ACLU Embrace, the Urban League, and then NAACP are kicking off that weekend with a rally to think about what's ahead. We're also in conjunction with the breakfast the next day. We're going to have some incredible speakers. Angela Davis will be there.
Oh, wow.
And then the Boston Children's Chorus concert will end the weekend.
That's
and
so
we're going to need that energy. We're going to need that joy. The Embrace MLK is about celebrating the diversity and the strength of Massachusetts. We have a diverse array of honorees, and that is intentional. And Rev. Irene and Dr. Thea are a part of those honorees. Governor Charlie Baker and First Lady Lauren Baker are a part of those honorees. Jill Mavadal and Richard, the outgoing head of the ICA, an art leader in our city, are a part of the honorees, and Bishop and First Lady Borders are a part of the honorees. And so this diverse array of Massachusetts strength, we're illuminating that now more than ever. It's important.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Governor Patrick, for people that don't know, tell us about Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King and their early romance that started here in Boston. And then we should hear about what the whole embrace thing is all about for people that don't know. Tell us about their romance.
Probably Amari knows more of the details than I do, but they were both here in school. He was getting his graduate degree in philosophy, I think it was, and she was getting her graduate degree in musicology. And they met, I think, at church when she was singing. Have I got that right, Amari?
They were acquainted at church, but their first date was outside of the church. They
on
had
Mass
coffee.
Ave. They had Mass Ave at some restaurant that used to be there.
Of course, their first date was outside of church. Everybody was outside of church.
That's right.
I hope.
Well, it sounds like their origin story reminded me of yours, because of the first date, Dr. King said that he was going to marry Mrs. King on the first date, and so I guess back in those days, 40 years ago plus, you showed up in costumes and outfits, or you asked the person on the first date that you're going to marry, and it worked, right? Those are the strategies that worked.
But one of my favorite stories that she told was about how she had met him and she thought he's too short. I'm not going to get involved with anybody that's short like this. And then when he called her on the phone, she said, I heard the voice, I heard the baritone, and I changed my mind. I just love that story.
And it's important for us with these awardees, and that's why everyone who's being honored is a part of a couple. It's important for us to illuminate the power of love, especially, again, at a time like this, and all different types of love and intergenerational love. And so this is why the Martin and Coretta Awards are important for us, especially on this weekend, especially on the eve of the inauguration.
And just tell people, too, about the sculpture and about what's around the sculpture and what's going on in different parts of the city who may not know.
Yeah, there are 69 other honorees that are illuminated on the Embrace in the 1965 Freedom Rally Plaza. This year is the 60th anniversary of the largest civil rights rally, starting at Carter Field, which is now located on Northeastern's campus. 20,000 people marched from that location to the site of the Embrace to the Parkman Bandstand. We just lost one of the founders, Reverend Virgil Wood, who was 93 years old, just passed away. He's now located in Houston, Texas. There were about 7 or 8 of the honorees that are still with us, and so he was the latest one who is now an ancestor. And so, the people that we're honoring will be a part of our next monument. So our intention is to build at least 10 monuments over the next year. And so everyone we're honoring, again, from 1995 to 2020, will be a part of our 65 Plaza for our future monument.
One of our great thrills a couple of weeks ago, right after his 100th birthday, we had Marvin Gilmore here, who came with his buddy Tracy Chang, one of my friends from Pagu. Hey, Governor Patrick, can we talk current events with you for a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, and Amari as well?
Does it matter if I mind?
No, I don't think you will mind on these issues, actually. You were in the corporate world, before you became governor, and you've been in the business world doing some really important things, I think. We've been talking a lot on the show about how as fast as they possibly could, in an act of the term we have stolen from Timothy Snyder, anticipatory obedience, virtually every major corporation that has spoken on the issue of DEI, except for Costco, has decided to take a walk on DEI. And in fact, Lee Pelton, the head of the Boston Foundation, we asked the other day, how would you characterize this? He said, I would use one word, cowardice. To me, it demonstrates that these corporations, after the killing of George Floyd, never really believed in it to begin with, if all that it takes to run away from it is fear of Donald Trump's displeasure. What's your reaction to the exodus from diversity, equity, and inclusion in much of corporate America?
Well, it's disappointing, to say the least. I will say I don't presume to speak for all of corporate America. I think there are probably some who were never as serious as they ought to have been, and others who will continue to do it but call it something else so that they don't draw attention. There is no denying the fact that we are a more diverse, more polyglot nation than we have ever been. And there's also no denying the fact that it's a more competitive business environment than it ever has been. And why on earth, knowing that there is talent in every community, why on earth would we act as if we're going to turn away from some parts of that community and not do what is necessary to make that talent feel welcome, included, and high performing? It's just hard for me to imagine. So my guess is that there will be a number of companies who display what Lee, I think, rightly calls cowardice, but who will do by another name what they need to do to thrive.
I hope you're right, but when I was thinking about it, we also discussed with Lee Pelton and Shirley Young a few months ago a story that Shirley wrote, which I think is related, the exodus of black CEOs from Boston. And when we spoke to Michael Curry of the NAACP and League of Community Health Centers about it, he said a lot of black CEOs who were contemplating coming here or here and thinking of leaving, and to me it's a variation of a theme, say they didn't get the support that their white colleagues did. They didn't get the latitude to fail on the way to success that their white colleagues do. There's a hopeful part of Deval Patrick's message, I think, that they're just calling it by another name. Do you share that hope, or how you react to all this?
I think that's what's going to happen. Those companies are going to be calling it by another name, and even the nonprofit sector with the passing of HR 9495, which is this new regulation that nonprofits that are deemed terrorist organizations, particularly nonprofits that engage in justice work, could lose their nonprofit status, their ability to operate as a charitable organization.
Do you worry about it?
I am worried about it. One of the things that we are having conversations with other justice organizations, we are meeting, we're convening, is moving to encrypted ways of communicating with each other and amongst our staff, right? Because our records, because we are public entities, are eligible to be requested. And so we want to be careful with what we say, and we want to make sure that there is no way to hack our communication apparatus. And so many of us have started using encrypted messaging to communicate with each other.
Explain to people how you can go from being a justice organization, doing legitimate work, to a terrorist organization. I mean, that's really frightening.
Depends on who's doing the branding, right?
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
exactly.
Governor, go ahead.
But how does that happen?
Well, Governor Patrick was going to respond.
Okay.
No, you can't explain it. I think Jim said it. It depends on who's doing the branding, and there's a concerted effort to delegitimize efforts of the kind that Amari is talking about, of the kind that he and I and others have been a part of, to help us heal and to be stronger. Look, we are all clear, or ought to be, that there have always been people at all levels who see opportunity, advantage, and even fun in division. But we ought to also be clear about a truth that we are stronger when we turn to each other and not on each other.
Yes.
And we've seen that over and over and over again, and we've just got to keep modeling it even when they come at us.
Deval Patrick, we didn't even think to ask you this question, but after listening to you again for the last few minutes, as we have for years, one of the questions we asked our listeners today was, after having spent the last week talking about, off and on, about Jimmy Carter, playing a wonderful interview we were lucky enough to have with him in 2014 when he wrote a book about violence against women around the world, and he was just otherworldly spectacular. And then what appeared to be Joe Biden's comparison yesterday during his speech at the funeral between the guy sitting right in front of him, the next president, and Jimmy Carter. The question we asked the audience, can a person who is positive and a truth teller and sees hope in things that others seem to feel hopeless prosper in politics in 2025? You're one of those people, as evidenced by what we talked about a minute ago. Is there a place for the Deval Patricks, the generic Deval Patricks, in politics in 2025, in the world of Trump?
Those are the ones I'm interested in, the ones I try to support and encourage, and I don't think I'm alone. It's out of fashion. We've talked about this before, if there was always some balance between substance and performance art that's a part of politics or elective office, today it feels like it's all performance art. And But I think it is. I think our challenge is bigger than hyper-partisanship. I think I don't think the political dynamic in America, I've thought this for a long time in Massachusetts, is Republican and Democrat. I think it's insider or outsider. And I think most people are feeling outside, and they will feel, by the way, more people who could have voted didn't than voted for Donald Trump in this last go-round.
Yeah.
90 million eligible voters did not vote. And I think that the reason many don't is because they don't hear anything positive about a place we're trying to go that is a higher ground than where we are right now. Or they don't hear enough of it. So I think there is a place for a voice, not that's, Pollyannish,
Sure.
but is, hard-headed about our realities, but also just as determined to close the gap between our realities and our ideals. And that's the sort of thing that gets people off the sidelines, not just in time to vote, but to build community all the time.
Do you subscribe to that
Which is exactly, by the way, what Imari is doing and why I celebrate him and embrace Boston.
So maybe he answered the question for you.
Well, he's going to have me cry on the radio.
Yeah, well,
no, I'm serious.
And you and I talk about that, every time I get an opportunity to be on here. Positivity is our brand. We are not the professional rock throwers. We do tell the truth. We see ourselves as truth tellers, but we're not. The other thing that we think about the MLK Sneaker Gala, it is an opportunity for democratic maintenance. Democratic maintenance can occur 3 to 6 months before elections. It needs to happen every single time. And so this is a exercise in democratic maintenance disguised as a gala. And so there are things that are going to happen at the MLK Gala. People are going to have a good time. There'll be dancing. There'll be celebration.
She can really dance, by the way.
I'm looking forward to that.
She can really dance. No, she can.
And my sneakers all look really cool.
No, she can.
But we're really looking forward to the democratic maintenance that needs to occur when multicultural, multi-generational groups get together and demonstrate joy. This is the most multicultural, most multi-generational organizational gala that anyone who's ever had an opportunity to attend, they'll come away feeling that way.
Well, let me ask you, though, about, you mentioned before your concern about justice organizations being recharacterized in a bad way, but what about arts funding in general during the Trump administration? What are your concerns, if any, there?
We're worried about that, but a lot of the art funding from and the funding for the national for the humanities go to states, and so every state has a humanities commission or they have an art commission. So some of that funding goes to that, and then some go directly to organizations on the ground like Embrace. And so I think there'll be an attempt to disrupt that.
He did it last time. He tried last time, but a lot of red states have a lot of arts funding.
Because a lot of the arts funding at those states, they don't have the type of benefactor ecosystem of individual donors supporting art institutions. Their funding comes from these federal dollars. So it is not going to be as easy as I think people think. We are worried about it. We are thinking about it. We are having conversations amongst art organizations around how we'll make sure that our funding is firmed up.
Can I tell you, Marjorie and I are going to be lucky enough to be there. We have not been to one Embrace event, a serious forum or a party or whatever that was not spectacular, where you don't leave feeling really good, encountering a lot of people you want to talk to. And when I encounter you, Governor Patrick, on the 19th, and I challenge your hopeful message and say, let's talk about something else, the Supreme Court of the United States. Are you going to give me the hopeful take on the Supremes or what?
No, look, I hope you don't confuse the hopeful take as, kind of denying the challenge, the challenges in front of us. All I'm saying is, look, we have seen dark times before. And our ancestors continued to imagine that Amari could stand where he's standing and I could stand where I stood, despite all that. And to me, abandoning hope is betraying that legacy, and I won't do it.
Amen.
Well, you're really something, my friend. Governor Patrick, we'll see you on the 19th. Congratulations to you and Diane,
Thank
Patrick.
you very much.
Yeah,
and Mari,
thank
it's
you.
great to see you.
Thank you for having
Governor,
me.
thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. We appreciate it, and Mari as well. Thank you both for being here.
Let me tell you, Marjorie, if you think she's not serious about being panicked on the sneak, no, forget the dancing. She is in abject panic about the sneaker issue.
Well, I have something for both of you.
Oh, what do you have?
Hopefully this will,
decorations for my sneakers?
Alleviate some of the panic.
These are beautiful. These are beautiful.
And so,
oh my
goodness. Embrace is an art organization. So we have some limited edition. We had an artist.
Beautiful.
Oh my goodness, and I'm a silver person too.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
commission some art for us. We are an art organization that thinks about the importance of individual artists in our city and in our world, global artists. And so every year we commission some. And so this is something that you can wear, and it'll give you that embrace confidence.
We'll be doing it.
You'll walk around with a hug.
Oh, we will. Governor Patrick, great to see you as always. And Mari Parrish-Jeffries, same to you as well.
Thank you so much. We've been speaking with Mari
care.
Parrish-Jeffries, President and CEO of Embrace Boston. Thank you again, Mari, and speaking with Governor Deval Patrick, two-term former Massachusetts governor. We thank him again as well. He also served as United States Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division under President Bill Clinton. That's the Department of Justice. We're worried about them too, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. Coming up after...
Wait, before you go ahead, just one more time. EmbraceBoston.org if you're interested in learning more about or going to the event on the 19th. We'll be there. A lot of our colleagues will be there. We're really looking forward to it.
Okay, coming up after a quick break, we're going to close the show on a lighter note, talking about flaking out or canceling plans with friends at the last minute. How do you flake out without hurting your friends' feelings, and how many times can you say your grandmother has died before arousing suspicions? Why do we have so much fun?
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the state will now do background checks on people entering Massachusetts' shelter system. We'll learn what that could mean for how the shelters operate. And we're back with the Joy Beat. This week we celebrate the Daily Table, an organization where healthy, delicious meals don't break the bank, fighting food insecurity in a sustainable and joyful way. That's all starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com. And Furniture Consignment Gallery, helping to power the circular economy for over 20 years. Now accepting high-end luxury furniture consignments in the greater Boston area. Learn more at furnitureconsignment.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here on Tuesday. The Attorney General will join us from 1 to 2. In honor of Marjorie, I will say no tickets or RSVP is needed. We're going to end the week doing our best to answer this question. How many times are you allowed to tell people your grandmother died in order to skip plans and stay at home in your underwear? A new piece out in The Guardian reports on this trend of what they call flakiness. That is, skipping out on activities last minute, ghosting your friends, making any excuse not to follow through on your promised and agreed upon plans. Our number is 877-301-8970. You can call or text on the subject of flakes, making plans, canceling plans, getting out of plans. Crucially, we should say it is not flaking if you have a real and serious excuse. We're talking about canceling plans because you're no longer in the mood, you're feeling demotivated, tired, or maybe something better popped up, which is the worst. I honor the commitment. However, the one thing I taught Marjorie that even you admit was brilliant. It's hard to say no to invitations for things. When you bring yourself to say no, my trick, which I think really will get you into the mood, is let's assume I'm invited to something on February 13th, which is a month away.
Yep.
And I really don't want to go. I say no, which is hard at first. And then I write in my book on February 13th in square brackets the title or the name of the person or the thing that I said no to. So that when February 13th comes, and I don't have to go and do the thing I didn't want to do to begin with, you get positive reinforcement from your strong, bold act of just saying no. But I repeat, because we're talking about flakiness, if you say yes, you really have an obligation to honor your commitment. Do you? 877-301-8970. By the way, you're in agony whenever you want to cancel something. You almost never do.
Well, there's a piece in The Atlantic. It talks about the antisocial century, that more and more people are spending more time at home. And one of the things in this other theory, this is a piece from The Guardian too, that talks about how the fact that we can text now. We can bail out by text. You don't actually have to call someone
Cowardice.
on the phone and risk that they pick up the
Cowardice.
phone. Then you have to tell them some story about why you're not showing up at their event, which is the next day. But they talk about really...
By the way, may I interrupt? There's a solution to that.
What?
Slide dial. Do you know what slide dial is?
No.
You go right to their voicemail.
How do you do that?
It's an app. You download the app and you call their number and you bypass... I shouldn't have said this. You go right to their voicemail, and they just think they missed your... Margie's writing it down. I don't know if it's called Slide Dial anymore, but there was an app, and there may be an app. There is surely an app, which allows you to... Can you check that out, Jamie, and let me know?
That's the same sort of thing. You're kind of sneaking by. This story talks about people leaving, not showing up for family weddings because they get an invitation to go to some swank weekend away with friends.
Disgraceful.
And they ditch the family wedding and they go to the weekend with friends. You know, it's just terrible. Apparently, lots of people are doing it. Increasingly, Gen Z and millennials, according to this piece, have a fetishization, I can't hardly say that.
I think we got the point.
Of being introverted. Now, some people say it's a mental health, self-care kind of thing. If they don't want to go, they shouldn't have to go. And what they really prefer is catch up with their friends from bed on the phone. But I don't know. That's not the same thing.
Well, say no to begin with is the bottom line. I mean, just say no. By the way, it is really hard if you're a decent person, which I sometimes am, to make a commitment and then say, I just don't want to do this anymore. But we were talking to Jamie, I think, about this the other day. Is one of the great joys, you decided I want to go to what I committed to. Mm-hmm. You do want to flake out, but you feel guilty and you don't do it. And then what is the greatest feeling in the world? That person texts you and says they can't make it.
Well,
so they initiated. Yeah. Oh my God, is that fabulous?
Now, supposedly post-COVID, people are getting even worse about this. They're ditching or they're flaking out on their commitments to going to their dentist appointments, which is understandable because who really wants to go to the dentist? Much as I love my dentist, it's hard to go to the dentist. The hairdresser's appointments, that seems like you would want to go to get your hair fixed. But even ticketed events that they've bought tickets to or business meetings that they're supposed to go to for work, we're worse and worse about that, coming up with these phony excuses why we can't
Remember Manny Ramirez from the Boston Red Sox?
Ramirez
what did he do?
Well, I think his grandmother had died about 12 times before he actually left the Red Sox.
Every time he blew off
always
something.
has to go back to the Dominican Republic for a funeral for his grandmother who died repeatedly over and over and over again.
Okay, here's a text from somebody in the library. I confess I have canceled plans recently because my father died. Is it an excuse if it's true, even if he died 20 years ago? I mean, who is that? Raise your hand. Is that really you? Is that really true? I love that. There she is right there. Well, that is technically true, so I think that's it's perfectly acceptable. You're good, so just go.
Slydial.com.
I just said that.
It's still up.
It is.
I didn't know that.
I've told you about this like 40 times.
No, you haven't.
And I'm going to tell you later who told us about it. I don't want to embarrass him on the air, but someone we both know very well. It's a fabulous thing, and it's sort of disingenuous, but whatever.
A texter says, sorry I was going to call in, but I got hit by lightning.
Okay, fine. Listen to Jamie. 877-301-8097. We want to know if you do this, you flake out. I don't even like that expression, but that's what they use in the story. Or you the victim of somebody else flake. How do you feel when someone cancels you on short notice? And when you also know that their excuse is total BS. And I don't like it at all. I don't even like it. I like if I'm getting out of something, but I sort of resent the fact that I know they're lying to me. You know what I mean?
You know, one time I remember when one of my kids was playing a lot of sports, you know, some of your kids get head lice from the different helmets,
of course.
You know. And I remember somebody calling me to do something, and I really didn't want to do it. And I'm taking the head lice out of my daughter's hair, and I said, well, you know, we have a head lice infestation here. And of course, they had no interest in getting anywhere
That's a good
near
one.
me. That was a good one.
That was also true. So what's wrong with that?
Well, I wasn't infested with the head lice. It was.
You know what I did, by the way? I shouldn't admit this either. After admitting Slide Dial, I bought a whole bottle of head lice, and I have it in the freezer. And whenever I need to get out of something, just sprinkle a few on someone I live with.
You must have had head lice with your kids.
I've had head lice like 30 times.
Yeah, it's really
had it just
gross.
last week. Kristen and
they just jump right off the hair.
How gross is it?
Oh my God!
You know what I did when my kid? Vacuum cleaner. Vacuum cleaner, yeah. Anybody have kids with head lice? Ever had kids with head lice? Did you use? Well, that's our buddy. Did you use a vacuum cleaner? Yeah, I do, with like a canister thing. It's great.
I use a head lice comb.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if your
vacuum
hair has
cleaner.
Really thick hair, it's really difficult to get it out.
Shave their head. Kristen and Sterling, you are first on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about flakiness, to use the term The Guardian uses. Hi.
Okay, yeah. So here I am, a longtime caller, listener rather. But,
thank you.
Funny you brought this segment up because tonight at 6 o'clock we have a work social that we've been invited to.
Yeah.
Our boss is putting it on. She's paying for the tab. at a really nice place at a restaurant here in Worcester, and I told her I'd go, and I don't want to go. I just rather go home tonight and get in my pajamas and stay warm. I don't want to go down there and try to park. I don't want to socialize. Not that I don't like these people. I love them, but I don't want to go.
So what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
I don't know. I've been agonizing about it all day.
Well, Kristen, this may surprise you, but people actually listen to our radio show. Do you know that?
I know, and I'm going to get caught. I know. Somebody's listening.
And you have a pretty distinctive voice, too. So tell us what you're thinking of doing.
See what our staff says.
What?
6 o'clock
Well,
in the front.
I talked to a coworker, and she said, I was just honest and said, I don't want to go. It's not my thing. So I'm thinking of just texting my boss and saying, you know what? I just don't feel like going. Or coming up with an excuse, like my dog is throwing up or something.
But wait a second. The difference between you and your coworkers, you already said yes.
I know. And she was honest and she was bold and just said, I'm not going. I don't want to. Sorry.
Okay.
And that's what I should have done.
Kristen, I don't know if this is a text or from our staff.
It's one of our
but
colleagues.
Somebody said, if somebody asked you, if your boss makes you do a work thing at 6 o'clock on a Friday evening, don't feel guilty, Kristen. You need a new job. So there you go.
Boss is not making her show up. She agreed to show
but when
up.
it's your boss, you sort of feel a certain obligation,
it's supposed
right?
to be a fun and bonding experience. I get it.
Of course.
And I guess I'm just feeling like I'm too old. It's going to be a lot of younger people there. I'm just a stay-at-homer now. I don't know.
Kristen, will you do us a large favor? What's our email, bpr@gbh.org? Or text us, actually. Let us know what you decide to do. I'm dying to hear this. 877-301-8977. We're rooting for you, Kristen. Good luck. Thank you very much.
Of course, you booked our Brian Landry evening out on a Friday night, Jim. Remember that?
But that was the only night the whole state would go. We go every Christmas.
Well, okay.
Paul from Braintree says, if you turn down Trump's invitation to the inauguration, you're deported to Greenland. That'll be the 51st state quite soon. Jake in Norwell, you're next. We're talking about flaking out, as The Guardian calls it, on Boston Public Radio. Hey.
Hey, good afternoon.
And you too.
So first off, it's lame to bail.
I agree.
For sure. And I may or may not be guilty of it. But I have a new method to try to prevent it.
What is it?
So when you're asked to do something, whether it's a trip with some friends or to go out at night and speak down the road, I think about it as if it were happening the next day, what I want to do it. Because a lot of times it sounds great 6 weeks before, and then as it gets closer, you
That's right.
less and less.
Exactly.
Can I tell you, that is brilliant. That is really easy and brilliant.
Oh, wait a minute. I couldn't hear what Jake said.
Jake said, let's assume you're invited to do something 6 weeks away.
Yeah.
Everything 6 weeks away sounds fine.
It does.
There's no pressure.
It does.
He imagines, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, that whatever the thing is actually happening the next day.
Okay.
And how am I going to feel having to do this almost immediately? That's what you're saying, Jake, right?
That's correct. You hit it 100%.
I love that. I think that's really helpful advice. Jake, thanks. Good luck to you. Take care.
Now we have a little sound from your favorite show, which is no longer.
It's not my favorite. I like this show.
Now, Larry David and the late Richard Lewis on Curb Your Enthusiasm, having a disagreement about the difference between making plans and confirming plans.
Where were you? I waited half an hour.
You didn't confirm. There's no way I'm going to go
I
there.
didn't confirm. We had a plan. The plan is the confirmation. I don't have to go to. I don't have to make another plan.
The plan is a plan. A confirmation is a guarantee you're going to show up.
Okay, Sunday, same time, same place.
Well, I'll need a confirmation.
You're not getting a confirmation.
I have a confirmation.
This is the confirmation right now.
This is a plan.
You're like some kind of government bureaucracy. You got the plan, you got the confirmation, you got a subcommittee. I got to go through all these levels.
Curb Your Enthusiasm with the late great Richard Lewis and obviously
But
Larry David.
people do check up that day because they're afraid that someone is going to flake out. Jim is the problem.
Now, if you've made plans long in advance and you don't get a confirmation, you don't want to go, do your spirits get lifted and you get all excited? And do you decide if you haven't gotten a confirmation, maybe not showing up is acceptable even without a text? Or, well, I didn't hear from you, so I assumed it wasn't happening.
Yeah, but I mean, you want to be out with your friends from time to time, don't you? And catch up on what they're doing.
Yeah, so you show up.
See them. Yeah.
I'm saying, what if you don't want to show up?
Well, it's always a hassle to show up because there's never any place to park. And
I thought you just said you want to be with your friends.
Well, you do want to be with your friends, but there's always a certain amount of effort involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that something happened with the pandemic where we're so used to just talking with our friends from home, and you're sitting on the couch in your pajamas, and you don't have to go anywhere.
Sure, yeah.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Now we think of it's a big deal to have to get dressed and get all ready and have to find a place to park.
What
and all
exactly is your position on this?
I don't know, Jim. I'm confused. Here's one of
I
the
either
theories,
want to be
too,
with my friends or I don't.
that we're overworked.
We're overworked.
Yeah, we have a lot of stress from work.
We do.
We have poor mental health, and we have no money. That's one of the reasons we don't go
So
anywhere.
don't say yes to
We
begin
can't afford
with.
it. Well, like you say, most things are planned way in advance, and you say yes. It's like when somebody gets married. This is a really tough thing for
Well, yeah,
young
if you're
people.
not going to get married, you should probably text the other person and say you're not going.
If you're in your 20s and 30s and your friends are all getting married and they're having a destination wedding or
Forget
a
destination
destination
wedding. No.
bachelorette
No
party
destination
or a bachelor
anything.
party, and you have to fly somewhere
Zoom
to go to a
in.
bachelor party, well, it's a big deal. You think, okay, this is a good friend of mine's getting married, I should do this, and you realize, it's going to cost you $2,000 before you get through with the wedding. I think that's when people have a lot of regrets.
Can I just say, Zoe, our colleague, was confused by my little hack that I was describing to you before. She says, how do you know the difference when the date comes on the thing you are going to versus the thing you said no to? This is not very spiritual. I put square brackets on my calendar. I do, around the things that I was invited to that I said no to, so I know that I'm not supposed to go.
Now, we have a texter who says, I say I got skunked when letting my dog out. How about that one? And people would make up illnesses, terrible
Unfortunately, they don't have a
illnesses,
dog.
like norovirus.
But I'm superstitious about that. I should have said this earlier. When I do make up an excuse, which is quite rare because I honor my commitments, to honor my commitments to get out of something, would you ever lie about like your kid is sick? I don't like doing that.
No, because then you feel like you're going to make your kid sick.
Exactly.
That's why you can only talk about somebody dying if they're already dead. Like
You know
the
what I
person
do?
that said their father had been dead for 20 years.
I say somebody I don't like is sick because then I don't really care what happens. I'm 877-301-8970. The note, I'm sure you wrote this, Jamie? Who wrote? Someone. Oh, Zoe wrote it. Jamie can't come to work on Monday. He's going to Canada to see the eclipse. Of course, he actually did go to Canada to see the eclipse, and I didn't believe that he was actually doing that, so whatever.
Bonding events for work should be scheduled during work hours, period.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen. And if you choose to go out with a coworker, not ordered by your boss, but out with a coworker at other times, then you do that. Lisa in Boylston, you're on Boston Public Radio with Marjorie Egan and me, Jim Browdy. Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
So I am a naturally flaky person, and then after having cancer and a bunch of chemo, it's even worse.
How are you?
And I'm fine. I'm
Good.
healthy. It's been almost exactly 15 years.
Glad to hear it. Great.
I get so guilty when I flake out on something, and I feel awful, and I have no excuse for it. And it's almost like it's fashionable now to be a flake. And I'm not having anything to do with it.
I
don't
love
like
that.
It at all.
I think it has become
Yeah,
acceptable.
well, that's the theory, that we're an antisocial people. We talk about loneliness all the time, more people suffering from loneliness because they don't get out and meet with their friends in person, face-to-face kind of thing. And there's some theories it's about the pandemic. And by the way, Lisa, how many times do you think people use COVID as an excuse when they don't even have COVID? Right?
Well, I have to say, my husband, the introvert, was in heaven during COVID. I mean, he had the biggest excuse in the world. He was thrilled.
You want to know something horrible? Lisa, that was a great call. I don't think I said this to you. I did have COVID several weeks ago. And when I took the test, this is horrible. I actually wanted to test positive because I had something I didn't want to do that I didn't want to lie my way out of. And I did have COVID. What is that? Something was wrong
I don't
with
know,
that.
but there's something, I think, especially if you've been vaccinated a lot, you're not going to get very sick from COVID. You have an excuse to stay home for 5 days and just kind of hang out around the house.
Yeah, well, both you and I worked through COVID. I didn't this last time.
Not the second day. I worked the first day. Second day I was too sick.
Okay.
Anyway, Katrina in the car. Thank you for calling.
Wait, who wrote this? Aiden just said, do you guys remember the days of... I don't even know this. This is like a Trumpian thing. As Aiden wrote this. Do you remember the days of drawing a little red line on the COVID test to make it look like a positive? That's actually pretty good. I'm sorry, Katrina. Go ahead. Hi.
That's okay. That was a funny point worth interrupting.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you. I appreciate your support.
Yeah. I'm a very loyal listener, and at this point, I've called in several times. So
well,
thanks
that's
for taking me.
excellent. We're glad you listened. Glad you called. What's up?
So my reaction is to the woman who did not. Hold on.
You called us, by the way.
Sorry.
You know that. We didn't call you. Okay.
Yep. My reaction is to the woman who just really didn't want to go to the work event.
Yeah.
She just really didn't want to, and she committed and regretted it. Obviously, of course, people have feelings that you shouldn't flake, and it's not right. However, I have an alternative to the binary, I don't want to go, and an excuse.
Yeah, what is
and
it?
Mine is, I'm sorry, I'm just not up for it, period. Because no one's going to question that.
Well, what are you talking about? I'd question it.
I'd be insulted.
So would I.
A boss, though. But I'm so sorry. I'm really just not up for it in size. Any number of things.
Well, what happens when the boss responds by saying, wait, Katrina, what happens when the boss responds by saying, I'm not really up to having you work for me anymore either?
Well, I'm pretty sure that's probably very HR inappropriate, if not illegal.
Well, maybe it is.
And these days, people respect mental health and emotional wellness. And in my opinion, you say that, no one's going to question it.
Oh, if you say, I didn't know you meant that. If you say I'm not really up to it, if you say I'm having a really hard day and I feel like crap, and that's fine. That's fine.
Like, start with an apology and say, I'm so sorry. I know I said I'd come, but I'm just really, really not up for it tonight.
All right, Katrina, there's some advice for our listeners. See what they think about it. Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it.
Here's a good one from Stephen in South Yarmouth. Chatting with a colleague in local politics prior to a meeting, we were both elected officials. I'm looking through a pile of papers, which included a flyer promoting a fundraiser for another colleague of ours. It was scheduled for a month in the future. I asked her if she was planning to attend. She grabbed the flyer, looked at it for 2 seconds, handed it back to me and said, "No, I can't go. I have a wake that night."
That's actually a pretty good line. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and somebody else said that it's the pandemic that changed people's feelings about going out. And listen to this one.
Wait a second. Why wouldn't it be the obvious? So many of us, remember we talked about the fact that people were dying to go places and do things because they'd been shuttered in, if that's the right word, for so long? So why wouldn't it be you haven't been able to see your friends or your whatever? Now I want to do it.
People get used to their routines of going home and sitting on the couch with their pajamas. I think that's what happened. Nate in Providence, thank you for calling.
Hold on, Nate. Before you go ahead, Emil in Marlborough texts, apologize, Jim and Marjorie. I bought tickets to today's show at the library, but I had a head lice attack and I had to cancel. We accept that.
Head lice
we understand
works
that.
every time.
You can, by the way, you can trade in the tickets for another day or get a refund, Nate. Nate, go ahead.
Hey, long-time listener, first-time caller. Love the show.
Love that. Thank you.
I just want to say I have a 10-year-old and I have a 12-year-old, and they both participate in a lot of school activities and a lot of different sports. Yeah. And they have started to get to the point where they're like, "Oh, I just don't want to go. I don't feel like going." And I am nipping that in the bud.
Good.
The philosophy around our house is if you commit to doing something, you do it, and you see through it. And I think it's actually taking with them.
You see it through. You don't see through it. You see it through.
See it through.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I like that. How do your kids?
You see through it.
How do your kids react to that?
I think they actually are buying into it. And now when they have their friends bail on things, they start to notice other people
That's great.
not following through on their commitments, and they call them out on it.
I love that. That's a great end to the story. Nate, thanks for your first call. Call us again, please. We really appreciate it.
Several of the texters are saying it's too expensive to go out. A lot of people are passing up because they don't want to have to pay for
That's ridiculous.
dinner or drinks.
Wait, you didn't know it was going to be
whatever.
expensive when you said yes?
I don't know. They got financial problems, Jim. Some other person complains that that they were having a Super Bowl party shortly before, and this friend was committed to coming to the Super Bowl party. So shortly before the person showed up, the host shoved his favorite soda in the freezer to chill it. But then he forgot about the soda after the person called to cancel. At 1 a.m. in the morning, the soda exploded in the freezer so violently, it's dislodged dishes from my cupboard, made an ungodly mess, and woke up my neighbors. Would not have happened if he had simply honored his commitment.
Yeah, can I tell you something about that? That was very moving. That was a fabulous story, other than the fact that it was a lie. I mean, how many times you put a can of soda in the freezer, it freezes, the metal cracks, and that's the end of it.
You don't think it exploded?
No,
and
I don't think the neighbors were
and
very
woke up the
upset
neighbors?
about it.
That's Paul from Salem. Okay, Jim is calling you a liar, Paul
I am.
from
Now,
Salem.
Marjorie, I always like to guess what Jared would do. I would say Jared, if he makes a plan, and he has a lot of commitments, if he makes a plan, I would say the default is he would always honor it, even if he didn't want to go. Is that correct?
I would say that too. I would say that too.
And what's
he's
your
a good
motivation?
guy.
Because you're just a decent person, or what?
Yeah, because
Well, I'm not that clever enough to be able to lie. Although I want to use the COVID excuse because I think a lot of people are using the COVID. Oh, I have COVID. I can't come. I don't want to infect.
Yep.
But we can't use that excuse because they'll dial in the next day and we sound perfectly fine.
That's right.
And
That's
spreading
right.
COVID at the library because we don't have it.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, but Jim and I are lucky because we can work from home if need be. And I did that when I had COVID last time.
Huh.
But you sounded like you had it, so we knew it.
I sounded like I had it. That's right. Okay, Jared, what's on the show?
Wait, that's it? That's the only comment you have on this? That was pretty sad.
well,
you have anything to gin up the conversation?
You fulfill all of your obligations,
I fulfill almost all my... I mean, Marjorie's going to mock me as she always does because that's what she gets
So
off
what's your
on.
excuse when you want to beg out?
What?
What's your excuse when you want to beg out?
Marjorie has COVID. That's usually my...
That's a good one.
It is a good one.
Actually, I haven't thought to use that.
Yeah.
That's right, because you figure you caught it from one of us, and it's reasonable
She's
to
had it
think
for
so.
11 years straight. It's incredible. Okay, what are you doing on that?
Or you could just be honest, and the day the jackal isn't going to watch itself, so that's where I have to be tonight.
What's that shirt made out of?
It's made out of mohair.
That is really nice.
Well, thank you.
Is that really nice?
Jared dresses extremely well. We've noticed
Well,
that
he does.
before.
Okay, what are you doing on the show? And by the way, which starts immediately after ours.
That's right.
So don't go anywhere, everybody. Go ahead.
So we're going to be talking about the LA fires, of course, and of all places for this to happen, the cultural impact, because it's happening in Hollywood. Museums are affected. Yep. Obviously, actors and memorabilia are affected. We'll also talk about, this actually plays into what you were just talking about, that there are conversations now that Americans need to party more, that we're so inward now that if we actually got out and interacted, we might be happier people. Parties have just kind of evaporated. And then...
Who's having that conversation? Sean Diddy Combs? I mean, who was suggesting...
Sean Diddy Combs.
I mean, seriously, who's saying we should party more? Who's that coming from?
That's a piece in The Atlantic.
Okay.
And don't you agree?
Oh,
I do read
that's the same one we have, the Antisocial Century.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It was
okay.
a brilliant piece.
Okay, what else? Quickly.
And the internet is losing its mind because it thinks that Jennifer Coolidge has not been using her real voice for decades now, and she just let her guard down, quote unquote, they're saying in an interview, to realize what she really sounds like.
You ever had her on, by the way?
Yes.
We had her in studio about 5 years
Oh,
ago.
my God.
Oh my God, was she fabulous.
She's hilarious.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay.
2 o'clock sharp. Culture
Thank
Show
you
right here live.
for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to you people that came down to the
Thank you
Boston
all.
Public
You've been
Library.
great today. You really
Keep
have.
up with us 24/7 wherever our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. On Monday, we're going to be joined by our food policy analyst Corby Kummer, author Elon Stavins, Boston Medical Center's Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett, and Princeton's Khalil Gibran Mohammed. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aiden Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John McClaw Parker, our executive producer Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Bill Francis, and Juan Jose Cadena. Thanks for the chair. Maddie didn't feel great today, so it really helped. Thanks to our host of the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Stay tuned right after us to the Culture Show Week in Review, which starts immediately after us on 89.7 GBH. They're also broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library studio.
What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Brown University pre-college programs, where academically motivated high school students can experience college life, nurture their diverse interests, and make new friends. Applications for summer 2025 open January 15th. precollege.brown.edu. Salt, fat, acid, heat, action. GBH has all the sizzling shows with all the seasonings. Catch your favorite cooking shows starting tomorrow at 11 and continuing all afternoon on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show. Coming up today on our Arts and Culture Week in Review, Southern California is ablaze. Unprecedented wildfires have spared no one. Hollywood celebrities from Billy Crystal to Paris Hilton are posting images of how the flames have destroyed their homes. Could their platform help to amplify both the environmental emergency and the heroism of the firefighters in a race to save people's lives? From there, Amazon is set to release a new documentary about Melania Trump, which promises to be a, quote, unprecedented behind-the-scenes look at the incoming First Lady's life. Skeptics call it a vanity project, since Melania Trump is the film's executive producer. Plus, as Silicon Valley prepares for another Trump presidency, Mark Zuckerberg is unfriending fact-checkers, saying they curb censorship. Fact-checkers say he's got his facts on how fact-checking actually works all wrong. And in his latest project, Bad Bunny returns to his roots in an album he says is his most Puerto Rican yet. That's all now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Welcome to The Culture Show, live at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen.
I'm Callie Crossley.
And I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. It's time for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Here's what it sounded like.
And the Getty Villa Museum is confirming that its grounds also caught fire. Fire officials say trees and brush were on fire there and flames approaching structures. The museum says the villa and its art so far has been spared.
This has been just a week like living in a war zone here in LA. This is the worst fire, or I should say fires. Pacific Palisades alone is the worst single fire in the history of Los Angeles. Thousands of homes.
This Melania documentary that we've been talking about that Amazon bought. It's a $40 million payday. Melania herself is serving as executive producer.
Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist has resigned from the Washington Post after the newspaper refused to publish a cartoon satirical of their billionaire owner, Jeff Bezos.
Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, CEO Mark Zuckerberg announcing big changes to the company's fact-checking policy.
Sally Mann became famous, or notorious, in the early 90s for her photographs of her young children naked in poses that were often interpreted as eroticizing their bodies.
Well, we can all start making Memorial Day weekend plans now. The 2025 Boston Calling lineup is here.
Oh, my God. You look like the 4th of July. It makes me want a hot dog real bad.
Well, as you just heard, the unprecedented wildfires sweeping through Southern California have reached Hollywood's elite. Could the attention they're bringing to the destruction of their own homes bring greater attention to the horrors of this environmental emergency? From there, it's millions for Melania. Amazon is paying $40 million for a documentary about the life of the incoming First Lady. And speaking of Amazon, a Washington Post cartoonist quits when her sketch of owner Jeff Bezos is rejected. Speaking of censorship, is it the tip of the Zuckerberg, with the founder of Meta finishing off the fact-checkers? Will misinformation trample the truth? From there, Bad Bunny returns to his Puerto Rican roots in his latest album. And wait a minute, have we really not known what Jennifer Coolidge sounds like? Fans are in disbelief as the White Lotus actress drops the act and uses her quote-unquote real voice. But we'll start with what's happening right now in California and those wildfires. At least 10 people have been killed, some 10,000 structures have been destroyed, and roughly 180,000 people have been evacuated. And with the thousands and thousands of acres that have burned, in some areas the fires have left a literal cultural wasteland. Obviously, this is completely devastating. I think so many of us have contacts, have friends who are out in Los Angeles who have either lost their homes or don't know when they're going to be able to return to their homes. They're trying to find hotels, hotel rooms are really hard to get. And then we back up even more and understand where this is happening, and we understand the cultural legacy of this part of California, everything that it has produced, historic buildings, museums, not to mention cultural artifacts for people like Billy Crystal, who has probably lost a lifetime of memorabilia in his home. This is just an epic tragedy in all fashions.
It definitely is. We'll talk about the Getty Museum, which was a little bit torched but seems to have survived, and most importantly, the art pieces. And it seems so because they really prepared. They cleared away brush. They put water around it's a huge villa. It's a wonderful place to visit if you've ever been there. And they have the ability to shut off galleries to protect the artwork from smoke. So that's really important. But I wanted to talk about something else that's happening that's been a loss culturally, and I don't know at this moment how wide a loss. So in Los Angeles, there are homes designed by a black architect named Paul Williams. Paul Williams' homes are just coveted now because there's so few of them in homes. He made 2,500 buildings in his lifetime, including the Polo Lounge, the signature signage at the Beverly Hills Hotel, LAX, and as a favor to Danny Thomas outside of LA, he did St. Jude Hospital. But it's the homes that people coveted. Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz, Barron Hilton, Paris Hilton's grandfather, and on and on and on. So many people have owned the homes. Right now, Joseph Gordon-Levitt owns one and a couple of others. But the one we know has already gone is Michael Richards' Cosmo Kramer from Seinfeld. Yeah. He has reported that his home, which was definitely designed by Paul Williams, is destroyed. Paul Williams was able to make his way in during a time of deep segregation. It was so strong that he had to teach himself to draw upside down so he wouldn't have to stand next to the white clients, and he kept his hands behind his back on sites so that nobody would have to be forced to shake his hand. Frank Sinatra was a big booster of his. He designed his home, so the realtors just wait for one to come on the market because they're really quite treasured. Also, he designed part of LAX. So already we know one of them is gone. You cannot get that history back. This is an amazing loss, and we don't know if there are others that are, and there probably are in other neighborhoods that we have yet to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, obviously an unspeakable tragedy, and I think about the first time that I ever went to LA, I had this sort of odd feeling of familiarity, and I think anybody who does that happens because so much of television, of movies, takes place in LA that these places, even if you've never physically been there before, you step in there for the first time and you recognize stuff. Mm-hmm. And, I've been thinking a lot about the nature of, kind of parasocial relationships, people's relationships with celebrities, and the fact that we've heard from so many of these celebrities, these people who we have one-sided relationships with. And I wonder about its impact on being able to humanize this, because I think it's good for all of us when we can humanize a tragedy, and it becomes hard to do that when stuff happens at scale, right? When it feels so big and so far away. But there are people who've studied things, and they say parasocial relationships aren't always good, but they can elicit more empathy in people. And so when people see celebrities or places that they recognize, and those are going up in flames, I hope it humanizes us to understand the depth of this tragedy.
Well, a strange juxtaposition of that is This Is Us star Milo Ventimiglia. I don't know if people realize this, but he played this character on This Is Us who... I won't give too much of the plot away if people are still watching it, but a house fire is a major part of this series, a core part of this series, especially for his character. He lost his home. He was on CBS this morning. I saw him with Anthony DeCopel talking about his home burning down days before his wife is set to give birth.
You start thinking about, man, hits you so quick. You start thinking about all the memories and the different parts of the house and whatnot, and then you see your neighbors' houses and everything kind of around, and your heart just breaks. We got good friends and we got good people we're working with, and we'll make do. Yeah. We'll make do. Yeah. Wife and baby and dog, most important.
And Edgar, I think that hits us on a couple of different levels because we understand how much thought he'd probably already given to something like this as he prepared for his character. We already have a connection to him because of that character, and then we see this play out, and you hear people like Melissa Rivers talk about one of the few things that she grabbed running out of the house was her mother's Emmy for daytime talk show back in the 90s when Joan Rivers had that talk show. We also are, I think, taking these extraordinary lessons away of people recognizing that these are things. They're very thankful to have their lives. They know that rebuilding is going to be a horrible, atrocious process, but they're separating, still managing to make it out of their buildings with pets and family, but realizing that they're just things at the end of the day.
What's interesting is that LA and California in general is newish, you know what I mean? It's not Boston with the kind of architecture and history of the things and the places. There are some historical pieces, as we've just discussed, but now you'll reshape it because you have to, because there's acres and acres gone, and it'll be interesting to see what direction they choose to go in, because people have often commented about, well, this is a place that doesn't look like it has historical roots actually, because it has that newish look to it, that California sort of just got here last week. But in fact, there were, long time architectural and cultural roots there. And what will they try to recreate that? Will they go in a different? I mean, it's very much left open because so much of the space is gone. And I don't know how you begin then.
And so much of it is collective too. When you think of the Palisades Charter High School, that was a setting for a number of films like Carrie, right? And Freaky Friday and Teen Wolf. Edgar, as you say, you go to Los Angeles and you immediately start to recognize street corners and streetscapes and neighborhoods, and you might pass by a home you recognize because so much is literally shot day by day, day after day. Also, of course, this is affecting the film industry, the television industry. All the studios have essentially shut down their productions right now because they can't have people concentrate in areas. They don't want people on the roadways because that's going to obstruct emergency vehicles. So this is going to have a major impact on an industry which was already hit by COVID, which was already hit by the actors and writers strikes, and now they're literally going to have to rebuild. So far it seems that the studios have not been affected, but certainly people's lives absolutely are.
And it's, again, it's also a reminder that the folks who live out there live under the threat of this all of the time, right? This isn't the first time there's been a wildfire. It's obviously a bad one. People talk about climate change and what that's doing in terms of, the nature of storms, the nature of a windstorm, which is able to, kind of create the environment in which this happens. So you wonder, I was hearing you talking about how are they going to build back. I also wonder how they're going to build back, kind of taking that into account. But I keep coming back to the fact that, and I know I hear you, Jared, when you were saying people talk about, well, I'm safe, my family's safe, etc. But there is also something about the nature of a home, and I think we can all kind of understand that when you hear, even on the one hand, you can look at it and say they're celebrities, they're rich, they have these big homes, who
and
cares?
Insurance,
they're going to have insurance, they're going to have the money to build back.
Yeah.
But also, I think you can recognize, and I've recognized in a lot of these people, that thing of they're like, but it's your home, and the stuff that you have in your home, while it's just stuff, is often your own little museum to your life, to the memory of those who have come before you, and it's sad.
And what I can't shake is the notion of not knowing when you're ever going to have home again, because it's going to be a long time before they'll be able to settle with
and
that.
Though they lived under the threat, Edgar, I just want to point out, this came urban, to come into those, and, where people were actually living in communities. Usually those wildfires were up and in loosely populated areas. It still was bad, but you know what I'm saying? It wasn't that it was densely populated, but there were a lot of folk there. So to see, you've just really wiped out communities. You haven't just wiped out acreage, it's communities.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think about earthquakes too. There is the threat of earthquakes all the time in California.
Right.
It's I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you are listening to our Arts and Culture Week in Review live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. Coming up, in a pitch for free speech, Mark Zuckerberg does away with fact-checking. That and more is next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the state will now do background checks on people entering Massachusetts' shelter system. We'll learn what that could mean for how the shelters operate. And we're back with the Joy Beat. This week we celebrate the Daily Table, an organization where healthy, delicious meals don't break the bank, fighting food insecurity in a sustainable and joyful way. That's all starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Museum of Science, where their Fun for All Ages seasonal exhibit is now open. All Aboard Trains at Science Park features more trains, activities, and magic. More at mos.org. And Babson College, where you can earn a part-time MBA for your full-time life at the school ranked number 2 best college in the U.S. by the Wall Street Journal. Graduate courses offered online or in person with remote options. babson.edu/part-time. And Lawrence General Hospital, now united with Holy Family Hospital to help build a robust regional healthcare system defined by a shared commitment to patient-centered care and medical excellence. More at lawrencegeneral.org.
Higher ed is big business, and like all businesses, there's risk. and secrecy. In our podcast, College Uncovered, we pull back the ivy and expose how college really works. Find it wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Horwick III. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes possible millions for Melania. The former and future First Lady has a deal with Amazon for an upcoming documentary. There has been a lot of conversation about what the new Trump administration means for business, and this seems to play right into that because Melania Trump has been given a deal. She has been given the deal herself because she is among the executive producers of this project for a documentary that's in production right now, that's shooting right now, that promises to give, as it was billed, a quote-unquote unprecedented behind-the-scenes look at the First Lady's life. I think it got a lot of raised eyebrows because, of course, she obviously is perfect fodder and subject matter for a documentary. However, Amazon is paying $40 million for the project, which seems like a lot of money for a documentary. We don't know how much is going directly to Melania Trump, but we know that as the subject and as executive producer, it's likely that that business contract has a lot going to her. And so many are wondering what this represents for Jeff Bezos and Amazon and what it means for their trying to get access to the administration.
Well, there's other pieces of it that are eyebrow raising, let me put it that way. And one is that the director is Brett Ratner, who in 2017 was accused by multiple women of sexual misconduct, and since then he's not done any kind of production, but he's going to be directing this documentary, so that's just of note. Do with it as you will. I would say that there would be a great amount of interest in a documentary about her, as you've said, Jared, in general, because she's just not out there much, and so if somebody were doing it independently, if our own Frontline was doing an interesting piece, I think it would draw a lot of attention on its own. But the way that you've explained it and the way that it's being framed, and I just told you about somebody else who's working on it, is just eyebrow raising. I mean, you're not going to get to any kind of, quote, truth of who she is. That's because she's controlling that. And the fact that everybody involved in this knows that, and yet they're willing to pay an exorbitant amount of money for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is also part of a trend, and I think it's incumbent on us. You know, we're in a time right now where it's pretty clear that we need to raise our level of media literacy, as well as those around us. I mean, I think there's a time, if you're not really thinking much about it, and you say documentary, what comes to your mind is something newsy, something that an independent press is putting together, something that's capturing real life, right? Well, right now, this is just one of many quote-unquote documentaries that are part of our media landscape now, increasingly with involvement at the producer level of the person who the documentary is about. That's not exactly the same kind of documentary as something that Frontline makes, right?
You think of Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift, Sylvester Stallone did one on himself. I think Michael Jordan had question involvement in Last Dance. I know a lot of people note even the that recent Patriots thing, that there's a Kraft Dynasty LLC. Nobody's really 100% sure. That director said, listen, the Krafts didn't have any involvement here. However, you know, whether they were or not in that, there are lots of examples of this. So I think people really need to, when we're looking at documentaries, take a moment and say, all right, who made this documentary? Who was involved in making this documentary? Because they are not necessarily, they have a slant, they have a point of view, and they increasingly. And I think this is going to be one of those.
And we know this and this would happen anyway, presumably with any administration, but media leaders, tech leaders are going to Mar-a-Lago. They have been going to Mar-a-Lago to meet with the future president. Of course, they all want access. I think what's also interesting to note is that Disney and Paramount also bid on this project. Strangely, Apple and Netflix did not. So maybe it starts to give us an indication of what is at play here. But as I say, this is filming right now, so this is something I'm sure we'll be talking about on the Culture Show down the road when it's released.
Well, it's coming out in the second half of this year.
And it's theatrical release as well, so it's going to be in theaters as well as streaming on Amazon. And I think it is worth noting. I mean, Jeff Bezos is worth $322 billion. So you know, for him, if he looks at this project and says, I don't think it's really going to recoup in theaters and in streaming what we paid for it, the $40 million doesn't really matter that much to him.
Well, next, speaking of the Washington Post and Jeff Bezos, who of course owns the Post, Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist Ann Telnis resigned from the Washington Post after her sketch satirizing Jeff Bezos was killed. She'd been at the Boston Post since 2008, and in a recent Substack post, she explained why she quit, writing that during her tenure, quote, "I've never had a cartoon killed because of who or what I chose to aim my pen at." If you're watching on our YouTube stream or you're here at the library with us, we're going to be posting the image that never made it into the Washington Post pages. And here you find her depicting a number of media leaders and Disney embodied in a sublimated Mickey Mouse, all at a statue of Donald Trump. And this was a reflection, her satirical reflection of what we were just talking about media leaders flocking to Mar-a-Lago to meet with the incoming president. And she was told that that cartoon would not run again. This is the first time, she says, in her career that that's happened. And the Washington Post responded by saying it wasn't a matter of content, that they had already had coverage of this sort in their editorial pages, and this was just a matter of repetition.
Right. That was what David Shipley, who's the head of the editorial page, said. Unfortunately, this came right after Jeff Bezos, and that was himself. He came out and said, "I am killing the editorial in support of Kamala Harris's campaign." This was an opinion from the editorial board, which let us again explain that it's completely separate from the rest of the newspaper. They do their own thing. The news reporters do their own thing. And he said, the only thing that he admitted was probably not good was the timing of it. He said, "I should have said it last year. I think these editorials in general are passé, and I'm just stepping in right now to kill this one." So here we have Bezos in that situation. So of course, I'm not saying of course, but it would seem from an Ann Telnis's perspective, someone who's been there for quite a long time and who's had very sharp editorial cartoons prior to this, not a problem. But this particular one rankled. And one of the people pictured in that cartoon, of course, is her boss, Jeff Bezos, holding up the bag to, and sort of omnipresent Trump. You can't see him as a figure, but you know who that's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a time where the media landscape is changing, and this is we're experiencing it. This is part of it, right? And you know, the Washington Post, the editor can kill this if they want to, and the reporter, in this case, the cartoonist, can take her stand and say, well, I'm not going to write for you now, you know? And hopefully, you know, I happen to be somebody who wants to see a free press, wants to see a little bit more of a press in the way that I knew it through the 80s and the 90s, in a time when it was, for the record, a unique, to some extent, time in American history through the middle of the 20th century and the late 20th century, where most of the outlets did not sort of have a point of view or belong to a political party. But if you look way back, you know, in the early days of the press here in the U.S., it was very partisan because there were a lot of outlets. We are now in a place where we have a lot of outlets again, right? The Washington Post, sure, a lot of people read the Washington Post, but a lot of people are getting their news not from the Washington Post, but from any number of places. And I think one of the things that happens when you have a lot of outlets is, in order for them to survive, they have to kind of develop a certain point of view or a certain allegiance to a certain way of thinking, and we're just in a place where that's happening. This is what's happening around us.
And actually, in this moment, while we're talking about the incoming administration, I'll just share that CNN is reporting that future President Trump has been sentenced with no penalty in the hush money case. Of course, in that sentencing today in New York, we didn't expect that was going to happen because the judge signaled that was not going to happen, that there would be no probation, that there would be no sentence. But that's what CNN is confirming right now. But to return to this cartoonist for a moment, here's what editorial cartoonist Ann Telnis had to say in 2019 when asked about the issue of censorship in her field.
Personally, I don't think there should be a line, because I'm of the opinion that once you start making lines, that's going to get you in trouble. Because who decides that? Are you going to let the state decide that? Are you going to let a religious organization decide that?
So this will be, I think, an existential crisis for the journalism industry going forward. It's also going to be a business crisis because after Jeff Bezos signaled that he didn't want that endorsement to run in the Washington Post, they lost 12% of their digital subscriptions. That's a sizable income. We know that they've had layoffs at the Post,
Right.
including most recently. The most recent round wasn't in the newsroom, but they also have had newsroom layoffs. So there is a lot for media titans to reconcile right now.
That's 300,000 people, by the way, who decided to end their digital subscriptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it is a little bit of the wild, wild west, and we just got to be with it as it plays out, you know.
Well, as we continue to talk about the media landscape, in an effort to curb censorship, Meta chief executive Mark Zuckerberg has decided dispensing with fact checkers will be a win for free speech. Of course, we know that Facebook was pushed into fact-checking. This really gained traction during the COVID crisis, and there was a lot of misinformation during that crisis as people were arguing. Meta, Facebook put lots of measures in place to try to make sure that they were presenting the most accurate information. And now, in his own words, here's Mark Zuckerberg, again, the CEO of Meta, in a video published earlier this week discussing the reasoning behind the rollback of fact-checking on his company's platforms.
I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
And the way he's going to do this is through community feedback, because he said that they have recognized at Facebook that this seemed to work really well at X, and so they expect it to work the same for Facebook.
Correction, Elon Musk has said it works really well at X.
But Facebook has cited this as well.
I see what I'm saying. His
I'm a little
source,
slow on the uptake today, Kelly.
His source is Elon Musk saying, it works really well over here, you should try it. So therefore, that's what he's doing. I think it's important to note that these are independent fact checkers. They didn't work on the site or the campus of Meta, wherever it's located, I guess in the West. So institutions like Polyfact, and they had ended up actually hiring extra people because there is such a density of disinformation that's different from misinformation. Mm-hmm. Disinformation is deliberate telling of stuff that's not facts, that's not factual, of information, sharing that around and insisting that this is true when it's not. So they had a group of folks whose whole job was, all right, this is not right. Here's where we got the information from. Here's how you prove that it is right, whatever. So people could follow it. And so that's what they're talking about getting rid of. Now, a long time ago, I used to do a lot of speeches about fake news and how do we begin to try to deconstruct what disinformation is and what it looks like in its forms. And one of the things that I can't remember who it was, but I used to quote somebody who said, listen, if you get your main source of information from your friends and your friends are not very smart, well, there you are. So I'm just saying, community notes, that's not comforting.
No, and in fairness to fact checkers, I mean, we could sit here and talk about how the fact checkers are not necessarily the answer to this either. Mm-hmm. I think the answer to this is there is no answer to this. The answer to this is that social media or Facebook as a thing, right, we cannot expect that is going to be an arbiter of truth. Like the job of Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, it's a private company, right? He's trying to make money. He wants people on the platform in any way, form, or fashion that's going to work for him. So I think, like, I don't know. For me, it's like between the two, would I probably rather there be fact checkers? I think so, right? Between fact checkers and community notes, what do I think is going to have better content on the platform? I think probably with the fact checkers. But in either case, I sort of feel like I think we have to understand what are our expectations of what Facebook should be and what we should get on Facebook, and how much of a grain of salt should we be taking anything we see on Facebook with.
Well, but that's because you're an informed person. So I want to say a couple of things. First of all, Zuckerberg is right in this way. It started off as a social thing. You're supposed to post your pictures from vacation, talk to some other people. That's supposed to be it. But then he and his folks got into news and information because they thought, hey, we can draw more people. We can be the source. And then once they got into it, they didn't want the responsibility of making sure that the, quote, news and information they post is accurate. So now you're into a space, and by the way, at no time or do any of us, including myself, think he had to monitor everything on the site. That's impossible. Yeah. But there were certain very clearly defined areas where disinformation was at a high rate. We're talking about COVID information. We're talking about immigration. There are subject areas which he knows very well, were rife for this, and you had to put some guardrails or give people an opportunity to understand, here is where this comes from, and here is what the real data says.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So once he decided to get into the news and information area, then he didn't want to take the responsibility of making sure what was on there was accurate.
I agree with that too.
So his only out at that point was to get some independent checkers to at least do that part of the job. The fact that he's decided by going down to Mar-a-Lago or whatever and listening to Elon Musk say, hey, it works over here, to do something else is really sad.
And it seems like he's just thrown up his hands. The New York Times has done some pretty extraordinary reporting on this, and kind of almost getting at the psychology of Mark Zuckerberg, who it seems he had very progressive causes at the beginning of Facebook, and there were things that they were he with his philanthropy was trying to do. He was hammered for that. He got more conservative. He brought in the fact checkers. He got hammered for that. So now he's letting the fact checkers go. And basically what the New York Times has reported is he's just thought, I'm not going to win here. Yeah. I've spent billions of dollars in trying to have fact checkers. I don't think it's that important. I'm going to define, to go back to your phrase, Edgar, literacy, media literacy here. I'm not necessarily a newspaper, so I'm going to define this going here on out, and that's exactly what he's done.
Well, and to be also very clear, President-elect Trump was asked, do you think that these changes came because he's worried about the possible regulations from your administration? He said, yep. So, we all know what everybody's doing here.
Yeah. Okay. And we're all having the facts.
Yeah.
Well, we'll say one more segment with the issues of the day in terms of censorship, if you want to call it that. But the acclaimed photographer Sally Mann, her controversial and intimate portraits of her own children rocketed her to fame. Now they are plunging her into infamy, at least in the eyes of the news outlet The Dallas Express and a Texas county judge. Some of Mann's decades-old photographs of her young, nude children have been included in a group show at the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth. This week, those works were seized by authorities after a police report was filed alleging the images constitute child pornography. So the background here, this is a tough thing to distill in a few minutes, but Sally Mann made these photographs of her children who were very young in ages, I believe 1 through 6. And she grew up, Sally Mann herself grew up in Virginia. She grew up in a rural area. A lot of these photographs were taken of her family, just being family, kids out playing, swimming, not with clothes, because that's what you do in their environment. There isn't running water, there was no electricity. This is just be with the land kind of thing. Her photography is very evocative of that as well. It's the landscape, it's living in the landscape. And as these photographs were first presented a number of years ago, there was controversy, but maybe I'll pause here so that Sally Mann herself can describe what her photographs have represented. Here she is in a 2015 interview with Terry Gross on Fresh Air.
Well, it's not that I wanted to do a series of pictures of my children nude. It's just that they were always nude in the summers when I did most of my shooting. We had a cabin on the river on our farm, and there's not another breathing soul for probably 5 miles in all directions, and they just never seemed to wear clothes. Why should they? They were in the river almost all day and deep into the night. So it's the fact that in many cases the children were nude that's how the children were.
So as I look at this, these are photographs that have been in galleries, they have been in books, they have been in museum exhibitions, but here we have a case where people in Texas have decided they're pornographic, and they got the authorities to seize the pictures so that there will likely be some sort of police investigation now as well.
Yeah, this is really, I'm not quite sure. So I'm really curious to know who charged. I mean, who led the charge? To file the police charge is what I'm saying. But I think what's important here is to note that this comes in an atmosphere of book banning and a lot of response to content that some groups have deemed to be inappropriate for children. And in all of these cases, it's all about the children. We're impacting the children. Everybody out here is a pedophile, or they're trying to groom somebody. I mean, this is a huge, overarching, ongoing debate with both authors and artists who are saying, "What are you talking about? You know, I'm here discussing a story, and the content is not presented in that way." Or even more, what happens is pieces of the content have been excerpted in ways that don't give you the full context of what's happening. So I'm not quite sure. I mean, this obviously is horrific. We don't want to go down the path of having police going into museums removing photographs unless they're phony. So and shouldn't be on the walls.
Well, let's look at the sequence of events here. And we were just talking. I mean, we were just talking about the nature of the press and the nature of a splintered press, and the idea that some outlets have maybe a point of view, but some outlets also maybe have a dog in the race. And in this case, it was the Dallas Express, which is a conservative website, which owns its conservative website-ness. And they were the ones who started the charge on this. They started beating the drum and pressuring the authorities to do something about that. And what I find most troubling about this, to a certain extent, is I don't think that the fight that they're picking here is in good faith, right? These are photographs which have been published, which have been displayed for decades. These are not new photographs. She is a known quantity. And also the law is pretty clear about what happens in this case, what constitutes something that potentially is something that the police ought to get involved in. And this is not that, right? There are criteria. The criteria is basically, would the average person say the work appealed to prurient interests? Maybe in this case, maybe not. Does it depict or describe sexual conduct in a patently offensive way? I think in this case, almost certainly not. And third, does it lack serious artistic, scientific, political, or literary value? No. She's a celebrated artist. These have been published. Like, she's clearly operating in good faith. Now, you can argue that you don't like the photos, or you think it's inappropriate. It is kind of controversial. Of course, it's children, and everybody's going to have strong opinions about that. That's fine. But what troubles me is the police getting involved here, and this being drummed up by a conservative news outlet.
You know, and the problem here is that she's a damn good photographer.
Yes.
She's a fabulous photographer. I got to be immersed in her work at the Peabody Essex Museum a number of years ago, and they had this fabulous retrospective. Her work is large. You just want to dive into it. You see how she sees the world. Her husband suffers from muscular dystrophy. She captured that, too. She captured his vulnerability. She captured their kids when they had bruises. She captured her kids when they had all manner of childhood. But then something like this happens. If a group walks in and they tell you it's pornographic, well, that's on them. If you walk in and you see kids naked who are living their lives, and there's nothing else to suggest that anything else is happening there, and you do know the backstory that this is taken by their mother, then that's on you. But I think, unfortunately, now it changes it for the rest of us, because this taint of this perception now hangs over her photography.
I would agree with that. And I, to your point, Edgar, if you have someone who has decided, or some group that's decided that it is that, and then you're on a train going somewhere before people have time to say, wait a minute, let me look to see.
Yeah.
You know, and much of the book banning, people haven't even read the books.
Exactly.
You know, so I bet you half the people that are lining up with the folks who brought the charges have never seen the exhibit.
Yeah, and I will say this, at the very least, and again, I don't fault anybody for asking whether or not this was appropriate for her to do with her kid. Absolutely, but what happened when she took these photographs, she initially said she was going to wait 10 years, but then the kids said they wanted them published. She sent them to psychologists to weigh in to make sure. She put thought and effort into this. Now, maybe that's not how you would parent, but you can't fault. I mean, she was doing her best in good faith. That much is clear.
She even went to Virginia, I think to the FBI or Quantico or something like that, and had somebody there look at it too, who said, sadly, people will be aroused, but people can be aroused by shoes too. So just do with that what you will.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the second half of our show, we're getting a lot lighter what we're talking about, including how Boston Calling is getting called out for this year's lineup. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
When you think about your later years, you might picture relaxing on a warm beach or spending time with family, or maybe you start imagining a new life in a different country.
When I was in college, I never spent a year abroad. This is like my year abroad at 73, and it's really, really fun.
How to retire abroad, that's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Visitors can explore a range of family dynamics through works from Manet, Mickalene Thomas, and Mary Ellen Mark in 3 new exhibitions on view now. More at gardnermuseum.org. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering dynamic short programs tailored for mid-career professionals looking to build expertise in innovation, leadership, and technology. Details at executive.mit.edu. And The Lyric Stage, presenting Crumbs from the Table of Joy. Set in 1950s Brooklyn, 2 sisters mourn the loss of their mother with Hollywood films, daydreams, and lots of cookies. January 10th through February 2nd at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com.
I'm Arun Roth. From Mattapan to Mashpee, there are people doing good works in communities all over the Commonwealth, and we want you to help us shine a spotlight on them. To nominate someone in your community for a Joy Beat feature, call 617-300-BEAT.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Herwick III. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy is truly a buzzkill. He recently issued a new advisory that alcohol consumption can increase cancer risk, and he's urging all Americans to scale back. He's also been vocal about our nation's epidemic of loneliness. So cheer up, because Ellen Cushing of The Atlantic has an answer. Party on. And yes, we can actually party sober, too.
Let's do it!
I love this story where, we recognize that there is this loneliness coming out of the pandemic. Jim and Marjorie were just talking about this on Boston Public Radio right before the show, that we're not going out as much as we used to. And why is that? And maybe we'd all be helped if we just got together a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are now whole generations of people that don't operate in real life, as we say. So, I mean, that's a cultural shift that we've talked about and seen evidence in many ways. I'm with her. Obviously, gathering together is a great way to do it, and we should do more of it. But you know what? All of us who used to be the hosts of this stuff's tiring. Let me just say. Yeah. And it's expensive. And after a while, you're like, hey, what about the rest of you? Pull something together.
Well, I love the formula that she had. Her formula was, you have 2 parties. Yep. You invite 10 people. You're going to hope that there's reciprocity. So by the end of the year, you have 20 parties if there's full reciprocity.
What really shocked me is, by the way, I love this piece. I like her tone in this. It's very fun. But she is, noting some statistics that are out there. And the one that really jumped out to me and shocked me was from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Only 4.1% of Americans hosted or attended a social event on an average weekend or holiday in 2023. That is a 35% decrease over the last 20 years. That is shocking to me.
That's shocking to me, too. Although I started to wait. How many parties? No, I think I've done my...
No,
I've
think
we're at a party right now. Thank you to the folks at the Boston Public Library for coming out to our party here today. Right. You don't have this problem.
And to make the Surgeon General happy, we'll just have mocktails.
Yes.
Both the Surgeon General and the BPL happy.
Which I happen to love. So I think one of the things that has been, talked about much over at Harvard with their behavioral psychologist, and I'm now going to blank on his name, but he did Bowling Alone, When people start, which the essence of his original book was, folks don't join organizations or groups anymore. So where did you begin to socialize in those kinds of groups? And if you stop doing that, and he showed a precipitous drop, and in his more recent books, it's even dropped further, then how are you connecting to want to party with someone or to create a hosting situation? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
But
I think it's gathering in general though too, right? It's not. I mean, we say party, but it doesn't. I think the issue here is people just aren't getting together at all. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like including. I mean, I think this has been happening for a long time. Even something like church, right? Which is, we've seen all the numbers about the decline in church attendance, and there's many absolutely valid reasons why I think people have stopped going to church in many cases. But that also is like a weekly community gathering, just like with people in the community who are there, and you see them and you have to spend time with them. But I don't know, people just aren't doing it.
It's funny that you say you have to spend time because you think, I have to go to this party. But then you come home and you think, I'm so happy. I did that.
Exactly.
I want to do it all over again. And well, look what the consequence of this is. Party City is out of business.
I know, which is crazy.
Sad day in America when
But
Party
I feel
City
like,
is out.
the anxiety piece is a piece of this too, I think. I mean, I remember being a kid and being like, you don't necessarily, not all people are going to be naturally like ready to be in crowds. Or I mean, as you say, Callie, we got to kind of socialize people to do this. And you remind me just saying that, Jared. I remember being a kid and like there was a dance or a thing, and I didn't want to go, or I was nervous to go, or whatever. And my dad would he'd kind of give me a pep talk, or my mom would, and inevitably like I would eventually warm up and have a good time and be glad I went.
So Callie, this is Edgar telling us that at that party somebody said nobody puts Edgar in a corner, and that's when Edgar B. Herwick III began dancing for life.
That's right. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Well, but we're laughing. But hey, you're an expert in a partner dance. It requires people to be together to make it happen.
But not just and I'll say this, not just one-on-one, right? So the dancing that I do, I think the thing
swing
that
dancing, we should say.
which I do. But that is, and it is referred to often by people who do it as a community. And the thing that really, like, people do like to dance, and they like to dance with each other. But the thing that brings people back again and again is the fact that people gather. And not just two people dancing. There's a whole group of people, and there's music, and you're spending time together. And that is really what is, I think, appealing to most people who do.
So let's settle into this throwback feeling with one of Boston Calling's upcoming headliners, Sheryl Crow. That's right, Boston Calling has announced its lineup for 2025, and people are lining up to call them out for what they are describing as bland, boring, vanilla, the worst lineup ever. Or a good lineup if we were still in the 1990s. That is the consensus among Boston.com readers. I mean, come on.
I might be, and I'm not a big music festival
I was going to say, were you going to go to Boston Calling no matter who was playing?
No, I was not.
Okay.
But first of all, they had to get that water situation straight. I went to BAMS Fest, though, last year. So let me just say that.
Not quite the same, but
no, but I'm saying, let's hear what the criticism is. It really is. Baby boomers, stop programming. Stop it. You and your offspring, stop programming stuff. Move out into some of the other areas and genres that people now have access to in ways they didn't. People are all over the internet with music, as you all well know. And so if it comes time to program a music festival, people want to see that. Now, having said that, let me talk out of the other side of my mouth and say 90s fashion, 90s everything, people are embracing with both hands. They can't get enough. So you would think this would make a lot of people happy. But I believe, back to what I said at the beginning of my statement, that because people are exposed to much more and are feeling very close to a lot of modern takes on genres, that they would like to see that reflected in a musical festival, and it's not in this lineup.
So my prediction, this is going to be much ado about nothing, right? Okay. So Jared pointed out on Boston.com, I think people are just kind of caught up in kind of owning the organizers right now. 73% said, I'm definitely not going. Like, I think people are just really into, like, kind of giving them the business right now because they're a little unhappy. Prediction, I think they're going to do fine. They're going to sell a lot of tickets.
Good that you're
I
not
think
going.
a lot
More
of
room
people
for
are
me to see TLC. Thank you very much.
I do like that TLC is playing. That's amazing.
I thought so too.
Listen, it's not that I don't like the groups. I'm just trying to speak for people who had, I thought, a thoughtful criticism.
I don't know if it's a thoughtful criticism. I think it was just a snap criticism. And it's fine to make it. I mean, the other thing, I find it fascinating to watch. So like Boston Calling, I'm sure you probably all remember, what, 11 years ago when they did the first one? Like that, yeah. It was just a small thing on City Hall Plaza. It has like grown up, and it's been interesting to watch just over the course of, say, a decade, this thing take on this whole other life, where now it's such a success and it's become such a moment on the calendar for music fans in this area and outside of the area that all of a sudden there's all this pressure to like get it perfect. And it's weird because it just, to me, when it first started, I remember thinking, oh, Boston's going to throw a music festival. That's going to be cool. And they kind of pulled it off, and now it's kind of a big deal thing that happens every year. So good job. But, you know.
I'll be very interested to see what happens when it rolls around.
Kelly, were you aware that Public Enemy is part of this?
I do like Public Enemy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have to say
there you
that.
go.
But then I'm in that group that, you know, recognizes all of these, and the young people are like, what the hell? Give me something else.
All right, that's your last bite at the apple. We're going to move on because we have something fun coming.
Please, these gays, they're trying to murder me.
Okay, so in the category of what now? Jennifer Coolidge fans are in disbelief as they claim the White Lotus actress dropped her act and used her quote-unquote real voice in a recent interview. So this is basically what happened. I have to put my glasses on for this because I have a lot of reading to do. We're going to do a little evolution here of Jennifer Coolidge.
Bring it to us, Jared.
So here is part of the interview from the Golden Globes correspondent Matthew Friend's Instagram page. Features Friend imitating Coolidge's trademark speech pattern to her face.
This is Jennifer Coolidge after sipping on a cold drink. Oh, God. Oh, God. It's not bad. It could be worse. Oh, God, I feel... Do you think it is good or no?
It's very good. Yeah, you're right up there with Ariana's.
So people heard that and they went, wait a minute. That's what Jennifer Coolidge really sounds like? So here is where the forensics investigation begins. Plenty of ex-users also pointed out that this is relatively old news and that Coolidge used her normal speaking voice while playing one of Jerry Seinfeld's girlfriends in Seinfeld in 1993. Here she is in a scene with George.
It's like you never see a really attractive woman getting a traffic ticket.
How can you say that? My sister got a ticket last week. Are you saying she's not attractive?
So let's move our little investigation on.
Okay.
Here is where it begins to change.
Exhibit 3.
She may have begun cultivating her voice while working on Christopher Guest's 2000 film Best in Show, because here she is playing Sherry Ann Cabot, a ditzy gold digger who is married to a much older man.
You know, people say, oh, but he's so much older than you. And you know what? I'm the one having to push him away. Yeah, we both have so much in common. We both love soup. And we love the outdoors. We love snow peas and talking and not talking.
So that was so successful that Coolidge told Jimmy Fallon in 2022 that her career was going through a dead zone and not much was going on until 2018 when Ariana Grande did an impression of her on The Tonight Show.
Well, I mean, Best in Show is one of my favorite movies, and Legally Blonde, I mean, you know.
Can you
but
give us a little taste?
Sure.
God, you look like the 4th of July.
If you want to hear the real thing, here it is.
Oh, my God. You look like the 4th of July. It makes me want a hot dog real bad.
Okay, I promise I'm bringing this to an end now, but just for good measure and for the final fodder, this is her definitive TV appearance because this is Jennifer Coolidge, with me. On Open Studio. Jennifer Coolidge, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, Saving Kitty, does this get to be a departure for you to dive into a stage role like this? I mean, she sounds like a fascinating creature, but who is she for you?
Well, I'm thrilled to be playing someone smart for once. Although I don't think like Stephanie's mom was dumb.
Ooh, so this is the first time I'm hearing this since they pulled it. That is not the
Thank you.
Legally Blonde voice.
That is correct. And so I thought this was big news.
They should have been watching Open Studio all along. They would have known.
Yeah, I listen, she could do whatever she wants because I love her.
Yes.
But I was surprised to hear her voice in that original Golden Globes clip. And I didn't know that this had all been resolved years ago.
I mean, we all know that actors use different voices for different roles, right? I'm just double checking where we're all at here. No, I will say this. We were just talking before about the issues with Facebook and the internet, but for me, it's a story like this that the internet was made for. This is the kind of thing that makes me glad that there's an internet, because it's ridiculous, and there are people who are like looking into this, and they are weighing in on this, and it doesn't really matter, but it's great.
Oh, okay.
We are being moved along. I guess that was a control room telling us we are done with Jennifer
Sorry,
Coolidge.
everybody.
P.S. We will never be done with Jennifer Coolidge.
That's correct.
But anyway, that signals that it is time to move on to our lightning round. These are the stories that caught our attention this week. Callie, what's yours?
Jenna Bush Hager, who people may know, who's on the fourth hour of today, has had an on-air book club for some time called Reading with Jenna. That is going to be separate from the big news, which is that her production company called Thousand Voices is now joining with Random House. Let me just get that right. The Random House Publishing Group for her to form a imprint, her own personal imprint, which she will pick what she says will be emerging writers. That's her focus. She's already has several of them lined up. You can go on her site and see the ones that she's already selected, but they've announced this. She's very excited about it. And for me, anything that supports reading and more reading and authors and writers, great.
That sounds fabulous. Edgar, what's coming up on the Curiosity Desk?
Coming up on the Curiosity Desk is we need to hear from you.
Oh, wait a minute. I was supposed to ask you about your lightning round.
Right. Well, I thought so too, but I was just
so
rolling with
curious
it
about the
here,
Curiosity Desk.
Just rolling with it.
I apologize.
That's
I'm
okay.
So sorry.
My lightning round.
I was just still drifting back to my time.
Just thinking about you and Jennifer Coolidge and
which you can see a picture online right now.
No, the long-awaited Herman Melville statue that is coming to New Bedford. We finally got a look at what that's going to look like.
And what does it look like?
Well, so here's how it was described by somebody else. It portrays Melville in a heroic pose with his mouth open as if he's beginning to tell the story of Moby Dick, and while a wave swirls at his feet and a whale ribs curl around his back. That would be one way to describe it. I encourage people to take a look at this. The artist here, Stephanie Rocknack, who also did the Poe statue down here in Boston, which I quite love. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not for you. I will say this, and I have long advocated for this. I think that anytime you have a competition for public art and you have a group that's going to make a decision about that, you should have experts. All these people should weigh in, but you should also have a handful of teenage boys or guys in their early 20s so that they can kind of get out all the jokes that are maybe going to come out when the statue or the mural goes up. And in this case, I think they would have been maybe well served to have some teenage boys get the jokes out on
Well,
this
on that, you know what? We're out of time. My two-word lightning round, Breaking Bad house, $3.9 million if you want to buy it for yourself in New Mexico.
Okay.
Yep. That is all for this edition of The Culture Show. Tune in Monday for choreographer Mark Morris and Mass Art President Mary Grant. Thank you today to the BPL technical and logistics crew, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, Pat Lally, and Olivia Corshio. Thank you to everyone who came out to the library to be with us for our party here today. We love having you here, love seeing you. Thanks as well to the Lenox Hotel and to the Newsfeed Cafe. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a hot dog and an art-filled weekend.
Where's Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library!
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Spend your afternoon with us. Stay with us for GBH's All Things Considered at 4 and Mark.